Good evening and welcome to our September 26th Board of Selectmen meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will start with the reading of the agenda. We will first go over our minutes of regular meeting for September 12th. We will then move on to community relations, announcements, and open forums. We have one item under appointments and resignations. That's an appointment to the Old Home Day Committee. We have several scheduled appointments tonight. We have a 6:45 appointment for the Blackwell Drive Road Layout, a public meeting. We have a 6:50 appointment with Treehouse Brewery for a live entertainment hearing. And we have a 7 o'clock, 7:30, and 8 o'clock appointment for the police chief interviews. Under new business, we have 5 items. Number 1 is Brennan Grove for 0 Point Solar Arrays, a request for a pilot. Number 2 is a 1-day special liquor license request for a wedding. Item number 3 is a cemetery commission request to declare surplus equipment. Item number 4 is a common vic license for a change of owner. And number 5 is to change to bi-weekly payroll and weekly warrant. Under old business, we have one item, and that's the special town meeting to finalize the warrant. We'll then move on to committee reports, board of selectmen policy reviews, the town administrator's report, and then any other business unknown at the time of posting. And our next meetings will be October 10th will be our next regular meeting, and then special town meeting will be Monday, October 16th. And then we will go into executive session and exit executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. With that, what are the board's wishes for our September 12th meeting minutes?
Through the chair,
Ms. Noble.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll now move on to announcements. Household Hazardous Waste Day will be held on Saturday, September 30th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 165 Barefoot Road in Southbridge, Massachusetts. A proof of residency is required. Annual Forestry Chapter 61-61A, B, and C renewals are due by October 1st to the Board of Assessors. Trunk or Treat, sponsored by the CAAC at 4 Dresser Hill Road on Sunday, October 22nd from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Trunk or Treating starts at 1 p.m. 1:45 to 2 o'clock is the Parade of Costumes. 2 to 4 p.m. is Crafts and Refreshments. And 2:30 will be the Costume and Trunk Prizes awarded. For any questions, contact Kristen Petrick at 508-248-9548. Representative Peter Durant will be holding office hours in the Selectmen's Meeting Room on Monday, October 2nd from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. The Town Hall will be closed on Monday, October 9th in observance with Columbus Day. Charlton Flu Clinic will be held on Tuesday, October 10th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Charlton Senior Center. Please bring your insurance card. No insurance? No problem. No one will be refused a flu shot. Trick or Treat, not to be confused with Trunk or Treat, will be held on Tuesday, October 31st from 5:30 to 7:30. The Town Hall will be closed at 5 p.m. With that, are there any other announcements? Is there anyone here for open forum? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first item under appointments and resignations, an appointment to the Old Home Day Committee. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached are 2 talent bank forms from Haley Clements and Michael Lindquist, seeking to be appointed to the Old Home Day Committee. They have been active with the committee and would like to make it official. The Old Home Day Committee would recommend the appointments, and I would recommend the board make the appointments as well.
Thank you. And I see we have them here. Could you please state your names and addresses for the agenda?
Yes, I'm Kathleen Walker from 9060 Baker Pond Road, and I'm the chairperson of the Old Home Day Committee, and I'm here to introduce Haley Clements to you, and she can give you her address.
75 J. Davis Road.
Well, welcome, Ms. Clements. We appreciate you putting your interest forward. Would you like to say a little bit about yourself and why you're interested?
I just like Old Home Day, and I love it how everyone's involved, and I just really like it.
Good answer. We all love Old Home Day here, too. What are the wishes of the board, then?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
I move to appoint Ms. Haley Clements and Michael Lundquist to the Old Home Day Committee.
I gladly second that.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Any discussion?
None?
Seeing none?
Nope.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Haley.
With that, we're slightly early for a 6:45 appointment, so we'll go to our first item under new business, if there's no objection from the board.
No objection.
And that is Brennan Grove 0-point solar arrays, request for pilot.
I do
Is
not
Mr. Grove
see
here?
him
Okay.
here, and I thought he was going to come, so I would recommend that we hold this.
Sounds good to me. We will-
Until, if he's looking, then he's probably expecting to come around 8:30.
And we don't have a lot of time for 6:45, so let's go to item number 2, a one-day special liquor license request for a wedding.
Okay.
Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Adrian Shigarikan for a special liquor license for wine and malt beverages to be used for a wedding on September 30th from 5:30 PM to 11 PM at the Barton Center Dining Hall. This request has been forwarded and approved by the Building Commissioner, Fire Department, and Police Department. Per the board's policy, the license, if the days requested are approved, should be issued for 2 additional days for the following reasons. September 29th, to allow the delivery of alcohol to the establishment where no sales would be allowed. September 30th, for the sale on the approved date and time as listed. And October 1st, to allow for pickup of any unused alcohol. Again, there would be no sales allowed. These dates would be reflected on the license. I would recommend the board approve the special license as requested.
Thank you, Ms. Graver. And what are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair,
Ms. Noble?
I make a motion that we approve the special liquor license for wine and malt beverages to be used for a wedding on September 30th at the Barton Center Dining Hall for Adrian Shurijian.
Second.
Thank you. A motion second to accept the license as requested. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll all move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. I think we can knock out number 3 as well. Item number 3, Cemetery Commission request to declare surplus vehicle.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Graver?
Attached is a request from the Cemetery Commission asking the board to declare the 2000 GMC 3500 Sierra pickup truck a surplus vehicle. This pickup truck was used by the Cemetery Department since 2012 and has been taken out of service, and the registration has been transferred to a 2017 Ford F-350 pickup that was recently purchased from MHQ. The GMC Sierra pickup has 119,000 miles and is in running and driving condition, but would most likely need additional work to pass state inspection and would be roadworthy. I would recommend the board approve the request.
Thank you, Ms. Graver. What are the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
I move to declare the specified truck as surplus.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you very much. With that, just on time for a 6:45 appointment for the Blackwell Drive Road Layout, a public meeting. And Ms. Graver, I'll let you set the table for this.
Yes, sir. The board received a request to put the acceptance of Blackwell Drive on the special town meeting warrant. You must hold a public hearing and vote to approve the layout as shown on the meets and bounds plan. Once approved, the vote approving the layout must be filed with the town clerk, who within 10 days must record the description in a book kept for this purpose. This needs to be done at least 7 days in advance of any town meeting action on the question of acceptance of a way. It should also be noted that all abutters have been notified of the public meeting scheduled for tonight. The planning board recommends approval of the layout request for Blair Builders Incorporated. They will present its roadway acceptance recommendation at the October 16th special town meeting during consideration of the roadway acceptance warrant article. Should the board approve the layout of Blackwell Drive, the vote to do so will be filed with the town clerk.
Thank you, Ms. Graver, and I will open the public meeting by reading the public meeting notice. The Dalton Board of Selectmen will hold a public meeting on their intention to lay out Blackwell Drive, formerly known as Elaine Drive, on Tuesday, September 26, 2017, at 6:45 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass. A copy of the proposed plan and legal description is available for viewing in the Selectmen's office between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and 7:30 a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. on Tuesdays. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter should appear at the date and time specified or submit any concerns in writing. And I'll declare the public meeting open at 6:46. Ms. Craver, did we receive any concerns written in writing?
No, sir, except for the planning board's recommendation. No other comments.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board? Is there anyone here for the public meeting? Seeing no one, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Through the chair, motion to close.
Thank you, Ms. Noble.
Second.
Motion is second to close the hearing. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion, the hearing is now closed at 6:46 PM. And what are the board's wishes for the approval of the layout of Blackwell Drive?
Through the chair,
Ms. Noble?
I would put forth a motion that we accept
To approve the
to
layout?
approve the layout as such for Blackwell Drive.
Thank you.
Second.
The motion is second to approve the layout of Blackwell Drive. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
No, what's that?
No?
Aye.
Aye? Oh, okay. Chair votes aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So we're a little early for the Treehouse Brewery. Is anyone here for that? If you want to please come forward. Do you mind starting a little early?
Oh, not at all.
Oh, please.
Since
Please,
I ended
intro-
early, right?
please introduce yourself, name and address, and speak right into the microphone. Then, first off, Ms. Craver, read the memorandum.
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Treehouse Brewery located at 129 Sturbridge Road, Charlton, for a live entertainment license to be used to provide music to customers while they wait in line for beer sales during the hours of Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., Thursday 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., Friday 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., and Saturday 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The application was forwarded to the fire, police, and building departments, and all have approved the request. The chairman should open the public hearing by reading the notice as posted in the paper and sent to the abutters.
I think we should probably wait the 2 minutes then to open the hearing. But if you want to introduce yourself and then maybe give us a quick update on the happenings down there.
See how that works? He invites you up early and then makes you wait.
Up at Treehouse, we're used to waiting in lines.
Yes.
Dean Rowan, co-founder, Treehouse Brewing Company, 129 Sturbridge Road, Charlton.
We're happy to have you here.
We're happy to be here. It's been great so far. What we're trying to do is obviously have a license to have not big, huge bands or anything like that crazy, just to have some entertainment for the people that are there already. And as I've told any of the people that would be playing, that you guys aren't putting on a show, you're just entertaining a crowd. So you're not bringing people in. We already bring people in.
So probably everything that he's just said probably needs to be repeated within the public hearing.
Correct, yeah.
So I think we are there at 6:49, so I think you can start to open the public hearing.
Perfect. I will read the notice of public hearing right now. The Charlton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 26, 2017, at 6:50 p.m. at the Charlton Town Hall, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass. 01507, to act on a request by Treehouse Brewing Company Incorporated to hold live entertainment at 129 Sturbridge Road, Charlton, Mass. To provide music to customers while they wait in line. Anyone interested should appear at the date and time specified or submit any concerns in writing, and I'll declare the public hearing open at 6:50 p.m. Ms. Craver, did we receive any concerns in writing?
No, sir.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, I just want to ask you to please concisely repeat that again.
Sorry.
We're so used to running behind time, it's always interesting when we're ahead of time.
No worries. Dean Rowan, co-founder, co-owner of Treehouse Brewing Company, 129 Sturbridge Road, Charlton, Mass. And happy to be here, having a great go at it for the first couple of months. Any issues that have come up, we've been able to work through and make positive ones. Just trying to have some entertainment for the people that are there.
Perfect.
So,
Is there anyone here for the public meeting, or the public hearing? I have a question. Is there a certain stage, or is it kind of just as along the line?
so we did submit the grounds in the submittal. Kim had brought that in, So we have a pavilion, and within the confines of the pavilion is where we plan to have the bands maybe out on a little patio. But, yeah, not so much a stage. It really doesn't want to be a big to-do. It's just going to be, we've had things like, what do they call it? Livestock. A bluegrass band just come and acoustically set up in the middle of everybody, just to do something. So we said, well, we should make sure we do this right.
Sounds like a great time.
Through the chair?
The pavilions.
I have a question.
Ms. Noble?
You mentioned having livestock there. So how?
The band.
Yes, I have. No, I have seen both the band and actual livestock. I know the difference. So how many times have you had performers there before coming and bringing this application?
It was weekends, yeah, on Saturdays.
Yes, but how many
Couple-
occurrences?
yeah,
Just a
on-
couple?
On Saturdays,
Okay.
yeah.
So since you've had them there without the application, what was your reasoning for bringing the application
Because we
forward?
wanted to make sure that we were doing it right. We didn't know that we weren't doing anything
Okay.
correct, and wanted to make sure that we were doing everything right by the town.
Okay. So how long into the winter season do you think you'll have music? Because I have seen the pavilion,
Yep.
and I know that you have the ability to heat it. So do you think you'll be having
We
them
may put
there?
sides on it. We may just drop like plastic sides to house just some people that will brave the winter outside, and if we can heat it enough, maybe put an acoustic band or something in there, because obviously with sides on the pavilion, it's not very large. And if we do bring a band or a group or a performer, single performer inside, it's not a very large area, so it will be something small.
I will tell you, they've always been kind enough to light a fire in a barrel for us in Munson.
That's very nice.
In the cold.
And so will the music merely be outside in the pavilion area, or do you think you'll have it inside as well, or are you still working
Yeah,
that
well,
out?
that's what I was saying, is your great question is that we're kind of working that out. Hopefully, the pavilion works out so that it can stay outside. And that becomes a great place for people to just enjoy. But to have a single act or maybe a duet inside, if we can keep we just want to entertain people. Like I said, it doesn't want to be a show.
Right.
So, and I'm a musician, we're all musicians. All three of us owners are musicians, so we know what it is to entertain people as opposed to make this big loud ruckus, and it doesn't need to be.
I
Mr. Singer?
understand.
Just if I'm guessing right, it's mostly just, you're waiting in line, although granted, it's a lot faster line than Munson, but it's nice to hear some music playing when you're waiting in line, or when you can get the tickets to draw a pint, to maybe go and just listen to it while you have your pint before you go home, as opposed to sitting there in silence.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right, and the beauty is that we are limiting our pints to 1, maybe 2 pints, and then that's it. So no one's sitting there and all day and drinking beer. So it's really, I think it's going to be a great thing.
Sounds like a nice experience.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being a good business and a good neighbor here in Charlton. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks. I hope I answered all your questions.
You did.
Oh, yes. Is there anyone else? Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Through the chair,
Ms. Noble?
motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. The hearing is now closed at 6:55 PM. What are these board's wishes for approval
Mr.
of the
Chair.
request? Mr. Singer.
I would move to grant the live entertainment license for the hours specified Wednesday 11 to 7, Thursday 2 to 8, Friday 2 to 8, and Saturday 10 to 7.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just, if we can just take a moment, I'm going to get, we have 10 minutes, 5 minutes for the first interview, so my
So,
recommendation is let me
recess?
get, no, just let me get John and,
Okay.
so,
So it's an announcement to everyone here and at home. We're going to be calling 2 of our selectmen who are currently off-site, and they'll be calling in for the police interview. Actually, Ms. Corrigan, do we have the,
Can you check with Barry? Did she give it to you?
I don't think I got it. The policy on that? I'll go ask her for one.
Hi, okay, hold on, let me see if I can get John.
Yeah, whiskey.
Hi, John. Okay, hold on a moment, please. Okay, I think I have, is John here? John? Okay. Do I have both of you? John? And then I have Rick? Okay. I am going to, all right, I'm going to put you on speaker. So you are in the selectmen's room. We have a mic to you, so they will hear you. Ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Ready.
All right. The chairman has just stepped out of the room for a moment to grab a piece that he needs to say with you on calling in remotely. So I think he should be right back.
All right.
All set? Did Joe get what he needs? Okay. Here you go.
What are we doing? What's this?
This is by memo.
Where's the questions? I am out. We can get started.
Let's see how close we get. Ready? Okay.
We're gonna score them as we go.
You will, okay. Do you need to say something? So we have Rick and John on the phone.
Yep.
They are both in Florida,
Yep.
and
Just
they have
to-
asked to be part of remote participation.
Perfect. I just want to take a chance to read the remote participation policy. We usually do this before, every time we have a remote participation. Voted to allow remote participation for meetings for the town boards, committees, and commissions in accordance with the requirements of the applicable regulations. 940 CMR 29.10, subject to the following. Pursuant to this board's authority, under that law, the board adopts the following policy and conditions in limiting use of remote participation. Prior to using remote participation, the chair and any subsequent chair, as well as any staff person assigned to such boards, committees, and commissions, shall review the requirements of the regulations with respect to remote participation, so the gentlemen on the line know the policy. The chair or staff person shall ensure that there is functioning phone or computer screen with speaker capability in the particular room where the meeting will be held. The member participating remotely must be audible to all persons present at the meeting. Mr. Swenson, are you there?
I'm here.
Mr. McGrath, are you there?
I'm here.
Perfect. A quorum must be physically present at the meeting, and the presiding chair must determine that a member's physical attendance is unreasonably difficult. They are in Florida. Participants may vote as if they are present. Members have informed the chair. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair announces who and the reasons for remote participation has been done. The remote participants will be noted in the minutes. All votes must be taken by roll call vote, so that's a note to the board. Every vote during the remote participation will be roll call, and we are not going to executive session with the remote participation.
You're not going to?
That's correct. We are not. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions? All right, we will start then. We'll move on to our 7 o'clock appointment with the Police Chief Center, and Ms. Craver will begin. Am I reading it?
Thank you. So as you know, the Police Chief Assessment Center was held Tuesday, August 29th. We have received the results listing the top 3 candidates. Per your request, they have been invited here tonight to interview with the board. Our HR Director has compiled questions with the input of yourselves and the Police Search Committee. Many of the questions were similar, so hopefully they will get at the areas of concern for you. The same questions will need to be asked of each candidate, although short follow-up questions for clarification may be asked. We have scheduled them for a half hour each as follows. At 7 p.m. is Daniel Dowd, who ranked 3rd. At 7:30, you have Keith Cloutier, who ranked 2nd. And at 8 p.m., you have Graham Maxfield, who ranked number 1. Danny Dowd is the first candidate, and the other 2 have been asked to wait outside the Selectmen's room so no one has an unfair advantage. Selectmen Swenson and McGrath will be participating remotely, given that of their geographic distance. You have in front of you shortly, and I will ask Jessica to come up. She's compiled these questions. She's had these questions, and no one else has had these questions, so. And here they are. Would you close that back door, please? Okay. We will only have the selectmen, so you have in front of you the questions, and we have taken the liberty to assign them similar to the way you ask questions at town meeting. We will only have the selectmen in the room ask the questions because of the acoustics. We propose at the end of each interview, you take a couple of minutes to write any comments. Once all interviews are completed, you will rank the candidates from 1 to 3, with 1 being your top choice. We shall tally the scores for an overall ranking while you have a discussion on the merits. I have asked the remote participants to email me their scores to include in the final ranking. Remember, if the number 1 candidate is not chosen, then there must be reasons for the bypass. Are you ready to begin, or do you have any questions?
I am.
Okay,
Mr. Singer, you have a question?
Jessica, actually, before I turn it over, if Jessica could come up and just talk about the sheets
Yep,
and rank the scoring,
thank you.
how you're doing it.
Ms. Lanza, if you just want to comment on how we will be conducting these interviews.
Sure. There is a sheet to rank, so once all 3 of the interviews are done, there is a ranking sheet.
Could you speak up a little more, please?
Yep, Jessica, if you could,
Sure.
bring the mic up and speak a little louder.
In your, as part of your packet, right?
So it looks like this.
This one.
So then at the end, you're simply going to rank them in the order from 1 to 3, with 1 being your first choice. On there is a civil service ranking, so that you can see it's not necessarily meant to influence your ranking, but it's there as comparative. And there's a section for you to write comments should your ranking differ from the civil service, so that there's a justification for your ranking. And then I will receive the different ranking scores, and I have a total tally sheet with everybody's ranking, and then we'll have an overall ranking. And then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Singer, you got a question?
Yeah, I do have a question, actually.
Make sure you speak right into the mic, too. Make sure you speak loud and clear for our remote participants.
That's fine. I have a question that I would like added to the questions. It was a question that I wanted to ask, and I know it was also a question that was submitted to be asked, but it's not on the list. And I would like to ask that question as the last question then, and I'll ask the same question exactly of every candidate. It's a very important question.
Ms. Renz, do you have any recommendations in regards to that?
I would probably just want to know what the question is.
Yes, I'm happy to tell her. And I would ask the same question of every officer exactly the same way, and I would write it down.
And it's not in those, did you look at these to see if it gets to it?
And,
Got it right here.
and just so you know, I had a list that was probably double the length of what's there, but since we have a half an hour, I was trying to keep it timely.
Understandable. This is like part of the one question that I know had been asked for somebody else and was very important to me as well, and that was regarding the Second Amendment and
Okay.
LTCs. So I would like to ask that question, if I may, at the very end, and I'll make sure to ask the exact same question of every candidate.
Just
Very quick
for consistency's sake, if you have it written down, if you have one of us read it. That's
Sure.
okay. And then
Write it down.
are there any objections from the board?
I have no objection. I know that was a question by another member of the committee.
Thank you. What about, Mr. Swenson, do you have any objections?
No, I have no objection.
Okay. For consistency's sake, I'll read it, Mr. Singer, if that's okay?
Yep, I'm writing it down for you.
Perfect. All right, so if there's no objections, Ms. Noble, do you have anything to add?
No,
Actually,
thank you.
here, I'll give it to you here.
Mr. Swenson or Mr. McGrath, do you have anything else to add before we start?
No.
Perfect. Then shall we invite in our first candidate? Sergeant Dowd.
Just go right into question one.
Okay.
I think that is the first question. I haven't read that. To be honest. Might just go right into it.
Okay. Well, brief introductions.
Okay, I don't know why, but you wanted to ask all those questions. Joe should be the one to ask them all.
Welcome, Sergeant Dowd. Thank you for coming tonight. I'll give you a chance for a brief introduction. And we can, then we'll ask you several questions, and then we'll proceed from there.
Be very brief. Dan Dowd, been with the Charlton Police Department for approximately 20 years. I'm a detective sergeant, and I'm interested in the position of police chief.
Thank you, and just make sure, because we have remote participation, speak very loud, clearly, and into the microphone. So,
Yeah, I couldn't hear any of that.
you can hear any of that? Could you,
But I.
Sergeant Dowd, can you please bring the microphone a little closer to you? Can you do a test?
My name is Dan Dowd. I've been with the Charlton Police Department for approximately 20 years. I'm currently a detective sergeant with the Charlton Police Department, and I'm interested in the position of police chief.
Is that better?
It's better. Not great, but it's
Yeah,
better.
so
Yep.
for the questions, can you make sure you're a little louder? And with that, we'll each take a turn asking questions. It'll be the same question asked for each candidate. And without further ado, I'll ask you the first question. How would you describe your leadership style? How would you describe your approach to policing?
As far as leadership style, I think you adopt habits that you've seen from other leaders and try to utilize those attributes and basically take those lessons you've learned and try to apply them to the department. Seeing things that work, try to emulate them. Seeing failures, try to avoid them. As far as my style of policing, I believe that a town like Charlton really needs somebody focused on the community, and the type of problems that we have in town aren't the same as a town like Southbridge or Worcester has, so you got to tailor your services to the needs of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Singer has the second question.
With the increase in traffic flow in Charlton, a concerning issue is one of public safety with increased risk of serious accidents and the potential for delays in public safety vehicles moving through the town when this occurs. As chief, how would you address the public safety issue, and what resources and parties would you bring together to mitigate the impact of this traffic?
We can't do it by ourselves, so we've got to educate the public. We've got to work with other agencies like Mass Highway, the state police, try to coordinate our efforts. Some things, for instance, I'm just talking about a local business just opened up. We're experiencing a lot of traffic with them. We have to have a plan in place. We also have to adhere to the number one complaint that citizens give at the Charlton Police Department when they call is traffic in their neighborhoods. It's either speeding cars or the traffic's backed up, depending on the day of the week. We definitely need to work with, again, those other agencies, the state police, as well as ourselves. I'd also like to see us eventually dedicate somebody to traffic enforcement during peak hours, because a lot of times there's just 2 officers on. They're responsible for all the calls of service that oftentimes put them away from where the congestion is or where the speeders are. And I think residents get a little frustrated. If we could dedicate somebody to certain areas at certain times, it would help matters a lot.
Thank you. Question number 3 will come from Ms. Noble.
Hi.
Hi.
If you're chosen as the new police chief for our community, what do you feel that are the top priorities for the first few months, the first year, or over the next 5 years?
One of the biggest problems right now, I think we're facing, is we are going to lose probably about 25% of our force due to retirements. That's
Okay.
without anybody leaving for greener pastures or seriously being injured and no longer here. So we're losing probably 5 or 6 people in the next 4 to 5 years. That is a problem that needs to be dealt with. We need to be able to recruit people. We need to be able to retain the people we do have. So that's a problem that's going to come, that needs to be addressed immediately, but will also go that 5-year period. As far as immediately, I think we have some radio problems that seriously need to be addressed. There's officers that can't communicate. That's going to involve repeaters. I know the former police chief and the interim police chief have been working with Ms. Craver to expedite that, along with the fire department. That needs to be pursued. We just had a terrible tragedy in an area where we don't have poor radio service. As far as a few years out, I'd like to see us transition to a public safety building. We have a decent building, but we're outgrowing it. Better to get ahead of this. Work closely with the fire department, the fire chief, and the Public Safety Complex Committee to ensure that we have a decent facility for the future and build it for the next 30 years, not for the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4 will come from me. What do you consider your greatest asset or strength that you would bring to this position?
I realize this isn't a 8 to 4 job as a police chief. I realize that it takes a lot of time and to be involved in a lot of committees. There's very few chiefs that I see that are successful without putting in the time. I'd be willing to put in the time. I've been on call. I know what that's like as a detective. I realize that it's not a Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 job, and that the community has needs on weekends, at night, and they'd like to see the police chief there.
Thank you. Mr. Singer, we'll have the 5th question.
In what areas do you have limited exposure or experience and feel it would be necessary to enhance your knowledge if you become the police chief?
Oh, unquestionably, the budget. I've done some things to improve my ability. I've looked into the budget a lot more, but I haven't worked on a budget with the former police chief or the current police chief. I have an idea of what they've suggested. I've gone and obtained a certificate in public administration to help strengthen those weaknesses as far as having prepared a budget before. And I've taken classes for budgeting.
Thank you. Question number 6 will come from Ms. Noble.
The town administrator has directed you to cut 5% from your budget. In order of priority, please tell us what you would cut and your rationale for making those cuts. This is a hypothetical.
Not having the budget in front of me to look and see what line items and stuff would constitute 5%. A lot of times you'd probably, unfortunately, you incur costs later on, but maintenance, building maintenance, cruiser maintenance, perhaps laying off some personnel, probably in the last order, police officers, if I had to make a crucial 5% across the board and I did not have the money.
Thank you.
And then just tightening the belt as far as what things are a necessity and what no longer are.
Thank you. Question number 7. This is a scenario. You are informed by several officers that they have a concern about one of their colleagues because he or she has acted irrationally towards members of the public and other officers. They indicate to you that he or she has a temper that flares instantaneously, and then he or she snaps back to normal behavior. As chief, what course of action, if any, would you take? At what point would you consult with the town administrator?
Well, immediately I'd want to talk to the officer to find out what's going on, what's the nature of these behavior. I would certainly get involved with human resources and probably the employee assistance program, depending upon what that answer was. But, a problem in a small police department is if you let that type of behavior linger, it becomes a cancer. It's very hard if you don't make immediate corrections and try to pull somebody in after having a behavior that's lasted 2 or 3 years or 6 months. It needs to be addressed immediately. I'd talk to human resources immediately and the employee assistance program, offer that services, and I would certainly talk to the town manager if the problem continued or warranted it based upon the types of accusations that were being made.
Thank you. Mr. Singer, with the 8th question.
There seems to be a lot of anger towards police in some areas of the country. What do you believe are the best ways to maintain a positive relationship with the community?
I guess I'd say keep on trucking, to be honest with you. We seem to be doing a good job with that. We don't seem to have the backlash that a lot of other agencies are having. We have officers that are out in the community that know a lot of people. A lot of times I spend most of my time waving to people. I'm not getting the finger. It's a nice town, but you need to keep people in the community. Officer McGrath does a great program with the juveniles. Those type of programs should continue. Citizens Academy, we haven't run one in a while, but those would certainly help. So people see a different perspective of why we're doing some of the things we're doing. I think a lot of times it's just misinformation. I think people think that we're immediately jumping on them when we're just asking for simple information and why we need it. If they go on YouTube, you can see a lot of misinformation.
Thank you. And Ms. Noble will have the last question.
Can I have a little follow-up to that, if I could?
Yes, Mr. Swenson?
The same to every candidate, though.
Yes.
I would just like to ask Sergeant Dowd how he thinks the police department could work with the school district or the schools in town to address the issues that brought up in that last question.
Did you understand the question?
I do.
All right, please answer it.
Ideally, I'd like to see an officer in the school system, but that's going to take cooperation from the school as well. We just don't have the budget or the personnel to make that happen, at least on a full-time basis. If we could get some support from the school, I would like to see an officer involved in the schools more. A lot of our problems, at least the officer would know about potential problems sooner than later, and maybe some kids need some services that he could help out with or she could help out with. But I would like to see somebody in the schools if the budget permitted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Noble, 9th question.
Under Massachusetts law, the chief in each town issues license to carry, also known as LTC, and FID cards, and also have the authority to issue restrictions on license to carry. Could you share your philosophy on the Second Amendment and the issuance of license to carry for all lawful purposes, including concealed carry to residents?
There are 2 types of license to carries as far as there's a Class A and a Class B. And if you talk to somebody that actually does firearms, they'll tell you that Class B is extremely frowned upon. Basically, the person's licensed, they're able to carry a gun, but they're limited how they can carry the gun, whether it be concealed or unconcealed, and basically it probably will not muster a legal challenge. So we've been instructed by the firearms expert in the state to issue Class A licenses to carry unless there's a reason not to issue the license. So in other words, either somebody is legally able to possess a firearm or they're not. The state has recently amended some of the reasons why we can deprive somebody of a license to carry or an FID card. But they do have a right to appeal to a judge. So a district court judge could actually instate a license that we denied So basically, if you saw, the city of Worcester had a lot of problems with Chief Jim basically said, former police chief Jim, basically said, nobody gets a license to carry if you've ever had a domestic issue. But that could have been in a not guilty, that could have been a lot of reasons why that's not, the license should still issue. He's been challenged a lot. The city goes to court a lot. That gets very expensive. I would issue licenses unless there was a reason the person had mental health issues, serious crimes, serious behavior that troubled me. But whatever I send to the courthouse, I want to have a record of why. It wasn't arbitrary. It wasn't just I decided out of the blue I wasn't going to give Bob a license, but I was going to give Sally one, and they had both done the same thing. I want to have a fair, impartial process. Unless there's a reason not to issue the license, I would issue the license. If there was a reason that concerned me or the issuing officer, we'd look for clarification, find out what incident this was, what really happened, and then let them go to the district court, send the court officer during the day. It shouldn't cost us anything to do that, and let them appeal to a judge. If the judge says issue it, that's what we have to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to any follow-up questions any selectman may have. I'll open the floor up.
Through the chair.
Ms. Noble?
Quick question. What's your educational background, sir?
I have a bachelor's in criminal justice from Northeastern. I have a master's in criminal justice from Western New England. And I have a certificate in public administration from Framingham State. I need 3 classes, statistics, quantitative analysis, and they do like a put it all together type class of all the subject matter. I need 3 classes, and I'll have an MPA in public administration.
Thank you.
Mr. Swenson or Mr. McGrath?
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go with Mr. McGrath first.
Go ahead, Rick. After you. I'll go after you, Rick. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Swenson first.
All right, thanks. Sergeant Dowd, we've had a real issue in town over the past couple of years with the timely and efficient billing of details and collection on details owed to town. It's really been an issue. Could you talk to us a little bit about how you think that could be better managed and how you would manage it?
Yes, sir, I can. I'm not here to badmouth the last police chief. I think he did a phenomenal job in a lot of areas. I think a couple weaknesses were how he handled some of the finances and how he handled some of the personnel matters that were before him. I think you need to get a head start on that. I think as a police chief, you need to see when the budget's going awry much sooner than later. It's a lot easier to catch. If you're not looking at it weekly, you're going to have problems. I think that the police chief, we have a saying in the military, you should stay in your lane. I do think that a police chief should have a competent person underneath him to run the day-to-day operations and ensure that the sergeants and the lieutenant are all doing that. But the police chief really should make sure that the budget and the finances are being addressed.
Thank you. And just a note for everyone on the board, and Mr. Swenson, I ask you please ask this for all the other candidates.
Yeah, I absolutely will.
Yep, and at this point, is it just clarifications to any answers that Sergeant Dowd has given, or any questions for the answers that Sergeant Dowd has given? If that makes sense.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
Just to follow up on Rick's question about the school resource officers, I would like to know where we would place them in what schools, Sergeant Dowd, and what do you figure it's a 40-hour-a-week type thing that we need there, Dan?
Well, I wouldn't limit them, sir, to one school. I have them spend, or he or she spend predominantly most of her time in either the middle school or if Bay Path was on board, depending upon the financial deal that was struck. If Bay Path is participating, I certainly think the high school kids tend to be the kids that have problems with the junior operator's license, have problems with alcohol, tend to have problems with bringing drugs to school and such, that the officer would probably have an impact there. With the youngest kids, the kids really enjoy the officer, but they don't seem to be, they don't have the need. They're well-behaved, they're well-monitored, but I think that the officer should make an appearance there. But probably the middle school or the high school, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. In response to your first question on your leadership style, you mentioned adapting attributes from other best practices. What are some Sergeant Dowd-centric style that you would bring, some of your own personal experiences?
Well, I don't think that the days of just going in and being a dictator are over. I think you need support. I think you need to, be as autocratic as you can if you can get a consensus. But at the end of the day, if you can't, you're the boss. A lot of things, we have a saying, again, I'm repeating it, stay in your lane. I probably would, what I don't want to see is the supervisors henpecked, where they're trying to run their shift, they know what they need. I don't want to be overlooking everything they do unless there's a problem. I want to give them some ability to mentor and supervise their officers, but have everybody on board. What are we trying to accomplish here? I'd like, Chief Charette has been very good about bringing the sergeants and the lieutenant in and having staff meetings. I think that needs to continue, just basically getting, it's a lot easier if everybody's rowing in the same direction, but ultimately, you are the chief. It's your will. So hopefully you can agree upon it, and it's something we can all work together, but eventually if you can't have anarchy either. So eventually, you have to make a decision and stand by it.
Thank you. Any last questions?
Can I have one more quick follow-up?
Mr. Swenson?
Yep, this is a follow-up. This isn't a new question. Sergeant Dowd, and this does relate to your leadership, your vision of leadership and how to lead the department. Could you talk a little, just briefly about your views on community policing and how you see that working in Charlton?
You have 1 minute.
I can, sir. I think we have to do a lot of things to put ourselves in the public. In other words, things like Old Home Day, events in town where we see, because we're unlike some towns where you could put an officer on a bicycle in the center of town, and if you had a business area, we don't have that. So it's a different style that we'd have to adopt. Being at programs, being behind the library when the kids are doing events and stuff like that, being seen, getting out of the car at those events, meeting the parents that are doing soccer and softball and baseball, and just having them see you. But I don't think we have like a downtown where we're set up where I could tell you I'm going to create a foot beat or a bicycle patrol. We just don't have that geographically. We're not able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all the time for questions that we have. Thank you very much. I'll give us a couple minutes just to write down any notes and organize our thoughts.
Thank you.
We just handed a resume.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
At this time, maybe it'd be a good thing to recognize the committee that did the search and set up the testing. First of all, I'd like to thank Town Administrator Craver for all the work that she did on this, and the Human Resources Director, Jessica Llewellyn. I'd also like to thank the interim police chief, Dan Charette, and Fire Chief Cloutier, my fellow Board of Selectmen, Mr. Singer, and especially Mr. Dave Peters. Dave brought a lot of insight from his hiring practices throughout his career to this, and he stuck with it, and I'd just like to give him a special thank you. Everybody else is an elected official or a town employee, and Dave, in the true spirit, stepped up and really was very, very active in this.
Absolutely, and I think we all echo that sentiment. And a big thank you again to everyone involved in that. It's been a long process. So, is everyone ready for the next candidate?
I'd like to make one quick suggestion. You might want to swap out the mic on that table with either John's mic or my mic. They may be a little bit louder.
I'll put the phone down on that desk.
Yeah, so we're going to move the phone down as well.
Oh, okay.
And I'll just make sure they speak a little louder.
Thank you. John, where in Florida? Over Sticky World. Oh, lucky you.
family.
All right, we're going to do a quick sound test. Ms. McGrath?
I'm fine.
All right. Mr. Swenson, can you hear us?
Yep, yeah, I'm fine.
Perfect. We can adjust those levels, and we'll have our second candidate is now coming in.
Good evening.
Sergeant Cloutier, thank you for joining us. So we'll give you a brief moment to have a give an introduction, and then we will go answer your questions. All right. So when you're ready, may have a brief introduction. Yep, please begin.
My name's Keith Cloutier.
And make sure you speak right into the microphone, too.
I'm sorry. My name's
Oh,
Keith
wait a minute.
Cloutier. I've been-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
We should just let you know that Selectman McGrath and Swenson are on the phone, and they'll be participating remotely.
Very good.
Sorry.
Okay. My name's Keith Cloutier. I've been on this police department for a little over 20 years. I've been in law enforcement for approximately 30 years. I am a town resident. I've been in the town the majority of my life. I am married. My wife here attended the school systems. I have a daughter. She's 20 years old, also attended the school systems and is a resident. I've started here as a full-time patrolman, and before that, I had worked as a full-time patrolman in other departments. 2011, I was appointed to the position of sergeant. I have a master's degree from Western New England in criminal justice, and also my bachelor's and my associate's degree is also in criminal justice. I've attended some law enforcement executive type trainings through the FBI, and I've also attended various other trainings, full-time police academy, and a lot of other instructional trainings throughout my career. And I've also worked at developing different programs, such as the dive team, auxiliary police unit, domestic violence unit. I worked on them units. And I also was on the Charlton Planning Board, elected member for 13 years.
Thank you. And we will each take a turn asking the question, same question we asked the other candidates, and then there will be some brief follow-up questions afterwards. So I will start with the first question. How would you describe your leadership style? How would you describe your approach to policing?
I would describe it as structured. I believe in structure. I believe that everything should be spelled out, that there should be clear and concise goals, set objectives, written. Everybody should know exactly what their job is, what they're supposed to do, and what the objective and what their goals are. I would actually institute within the department specifically goals for each supervisor, but I would do it not only as for specific supervisors, I would do it based on shift. So that way, any officer that gets promoted, any sergeant would know this is what the duties are of a day shift sergeant. This is the duties of a second shift sergeant. This is the duties of a lieutenant. This is the duties of a third shift sergeant. That way, what that does is that gives consistency within the department. So that way, if you have people that shift bid, move around, and they move to different shifts, they will instantly know where they're going to be and the duties that they're going to have. We also have a lot of times when we have sergeants that might work different shifts as overtime. So when they come in, they would have an understanding that, okay, this may not be what I normally do, but I'm on this shift, and today this is what I do. And I think that way you have that consistency. Everybody knows what they're doing. Regulations, they need to be updated at least yearly. They should be looked at so everybody knows, and everybody should have a copy of it, understand it, and been trained on it.
Thank you. Mr. Singer will have the second question.
With the increase in traffic flow in Charlton, a concerning issue is one of public safety with increased risk of serious accidents and the potential for delays in public safety vehicles moving through town when this occurs. As chief, how would you address the public safety issue, and what resources and parties would you bring together to mitigate the impact of this traffic?
That's one of our biggest concerns in town. I mean, we have a lot of other types of crimes in town, but I think our biggest concern, we talk about traffic and we think of moving violations, they're minor violations. But the reality is these are where our people are dying. Over the years, we average 1 or 2. I think we've had 2 fatal accidents this year. A few years ago, we had 5 fatal accidents, and they're not all on just the highways. The year that we had 2 were on the highways, 3 of them were on the back roads. Looking forward, one of the problems that we've been having is because we've been losing personnel in the department, we haven't been able to give the attention to traffic enforcement like we should be giving. And one of the areas that we should really start thinking about is if we can add personnel is actually having a traffic division where we have a specific officer that goes out there and that's all they do. They're not answering calls for service. Their specific job is to do traffic enforcement. That way you can move them around town, put them where you need them. People have complaints, you can dedicate them to that area. Right now, what's happening is the officers that are on patrol also have to answer calls for service. So what ends up happening is they'll stop, run radar, maybe look at a traffic light, watch it. A lot of times they're not there very long. They're getting called to a dispatch to a call for service, to a domestic or something like that, and now they can't spend the time there. So if you do a dedicated traffic division, you'd be able to have that person taking care of your traffic needs. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to work with the state. Route 20 right now, obviously with the traffic that's increasing, we've got a few problem areas. One of them is now with the new treehouse. That's one. The other one is the intersection of 20 and 169. So the problem you have is the state's an interesting creature. They don't move very fast. They only move fast unfortunately, when something happens. And I think we need to take as a town a very proactive approach to being able to get them on board with the state and showing them what our issues are, showing them what the accidents are, showing them where the concerns are. If you would take a look at Treehouse, one of the fixes was we're going to make them only make a right-hand turn. Well, they make a right turn to nowhere. Their first place that they can actually do a turnaround is really CVS. Most of these people come off the highway, come off of 84, the Mass Pike. They want to go back there. So now they're pulling U-turns and turning in people's driveways. Route 169, we have that merging traffic there. We also have 2 lanes now going into 1 as you're heading east, and that's creating problems. I think what we need to do is talk to the state, talk to the engineers. How can we fix this? I would have some suggestions on what I would think might work, but obviously, because it's a state, they're going to decide what they want to do.
Before you
Thank
go
you.
to your next question.
Yes, Ms. Graber.
if I may. Selectman McGrath
Can I
and
ask
Svensson.
a follow-up before we go on to the next question, please?
We'll ask we say follow-ups
But
to the
can I-
end, but please let Ms. Graber speak.
Can I ask you, if you're able with your phone to hit the mute until you're ready to speak? There's some feedback coming through the phone. Thank you.
Thank you. And please, we'll have all follow-up questions at the end. Question number 3 will come from Ms. Noble.
And this is a good segue into what you were just talking about. If you are chosen as the new police chief for our community, what do you feel are the top priorities for the first few months, first year, or over the next 5 years?
Okay. I think immediately what needs to be done is, like I said, the structure. Everybody needs to understand what their jobs are, what their goals are, and have feedback from the chief. It needs to start from the chief down to the supervisors, and then from the supervisors down to the regular staff. That has to happen immediately. You can't just have people out there not understanding what their job is, especially with a new chief, because a lot of times they're like, okay, what's he going to do? Even though they do know who I am, I wasn't in that position. The second thing is I think we need to talk about the budget itself and for the personnel. Over the last, I've been here 22 years, we are actually down 1 police officer, plus we are down 1 supervisor's position. I did a little bit of research on the budget, and I looked at, right now, we're approximately 2.1 million. I looked back at 2009. At 2009, we were at 1.9 million. So we've been increasing our budget at approximately 1.25 a year, okay?
And that doesn't even take care of our contractual obligations. We are growing with the contractual obligations higher than 1.25. So we are, from 2009 standards, less than what we are today. And like, I actually made a list, because I started thinking about it, it's like I've been here for a long time, like what were some of the things that we've done, and what are the things that we no longer do? School resource officer. Now, we used to have a school resource officer, we also had a DARE program. The DARE program, school resource officers, not only did they go into the schools, but they used to do after-school programs. They used to also go out to the community and do stuff in the summertime. We no longer do a Citizens Police Academy. We no longer do RAD. We no longer do boat patrol. We no longer have a canine unit. We no longer have a bike patrol. We no longer have a domestic violence unit. No longer have a Citizens Police Academy, ride-alongs. We have not done school shooter training with the police department in almost 10 years. And we've lost one member to the SWAT team. And I know there's some other stuff too. So this is a direct result of us not growing because the cuts had to come from somewhere. Okay? And that's what happened. Over the years, we had to start eliminating these programs in order to be able to meet the budget and meet payroll. So right now, we're at the position is we really don't have anywhere else to cut except one area, which would be the detectives unit, which would have to, if we don't increase personnel, chances are we will be closing our detectives unit because there just won't be the money to run that. So my goal would be try to bring some of this back. All of this is money. It all relates back to money. At least try to build ourselves to the position where we can kind of get some of these programs back, have that outreach to the people, have that connection with the people, especially with the kids in the school systems. I think especially with a lot of the issues going on with drugs today, I think it's important that we can get into the school systems and speak to the children before they become addicts, before all this stuff happens. Because if you're gonna prevent something, that's where you need to be. And right now, we're not, obviously, we're not doing any of that. So that's where I would focus.
Thank you. And just a note, Mr. Swenson and Mr. McGrath, please make sure your phone's on mute. Thank you. Fourth question from me. What do you consider your greatest asset or strength that you would bring to this position?
I have kind of a strong personality, and I think what that does is that does me well when I'm dealing with the personnel. I'm not afraid to tell them what I think. I'm not afraid to tell them no. I'm not afraid to give them direction. I'm not afraid to give them praise. I'm not afraid to give them criticism. And so where I like structure with a strong personality, I think that would work good, especially in a law enforcement chief's position.
Thank you. Next question will come from Mr. Singer.
In what areas do you have limited exposure or experience and feel it would be necessary to enhance your knowledge if you become the police chief?
I think it would be budgeting, obviously. The entire command staff was not really involved in the budgeting process at all. I can just tell you from my own budgeting, from home, which is, budgeting is budgeting in some ways, that I know exactly where my budget is on a daily basis. I think the budget here, and I actually have a copy of the budget and the way it's broken down, I would like to see this broken down a little bit better than this. And so you could actually know what is coming in, what is going out, where it's going, how much you have left. Because like right now, if you were to look at the salaries, which is the biggest part of your budget, it doesn't get separated between overtime and regular time. I would want to know what is my regular time to be able to pay the salaries and their benefits for the entire year, then separate what is my overtime cost from there. Separate the two budgets from overtime. That way, as I use my overtime on a monthly basis, I can now calculate out how much overtime I'm using throughout the year, and am I going to run into trouble? Am I using too much right now? Do I have to cut back on it? So these are some of the things that, you really got to keep on top of is that knowing exactly what you have for money so that you're not at the end of the year going, oh my God, I have no money left.
Thank you. Ms. Noble will have the next question.
This is a hypothetical. The town administrator has directed you to cut 5% from your budget. In order of priority, please tell us what you would cut and the rationale for making those particular cuts.
First thing I would do is I would cut, again, like I said, I would have to cut the detectives unit. And the reason for that is our primary responsibility as a police department is answering the calls for service and being able to get to the calls, to be able to answer calls, to be able to, go to accidents and things like that. You can't cut in that area. You have to be able to respond to people's houses. You have to be able to respond to the breaking and entering. You have to be able to respond to the car accident. You have to respond to the mental health issues. And unfortunately, the detectives unit is something that comes in after the fact, and that's your follow-up. So it's not the immediate response, it's the after response. So if you're going to cut anywhere, that's really the only place that you can cut. Now, after that, the way our department's set up, the only other place you can start now cutting is equipment. The last thing I would ever want to do is cut personnel for various reasons. As I already showed you, we've already lost all our programs. And the only other place now that we can cut would be to start laying people off. Now, that presents other problems, such as paying unemployment insurance and things like that. So that's where I would have to start with where I would cut. Lastly, where we're at right now is probably a layoff, but obviously that's something you never want to do.
Thank you. I will have the next question. This is a scenario. You are informed by several officers that they have concern about one of their colleagues because he has acted irrationally towards members of the public and other officers. They indicate to you that he has a temper that flares instantaneously and then he snaps back to normal behavior. As chief, what course of action, if any, would you take? At what point would you consult with the town administrator?
I think as a
I'm
department...
sorry. Mr. Swenson and Mr. McGrath? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Please make sure one of your phones is not on mute. Make sure it's on mute. Thank you. Sorry, continue.
No problem. I think what first thing you need to do as the department head, you have to call in the employee and talk to him, kind of get an idea of what's going on. There could be various reasons. It could be a personality issue. It could be they're having trouble at home. It could be they're having some type of mental health issues. It could be that they're having substance abuse issues. Hopefully, with the first interaction that you have with them, you're going to be able to determine what that is. When you determine what that is, that's going to dictate where you're going with this. Now, if it's a discipline issue, that's going to be a whole different thing. Because now you're going to have to be able to justify any type of discipline that's going to come down from that. That means you're going to have to do an investigation. You're going to have to talk to the people that he's interacted or she's interacted with and find out exactly what was going on to be able to decide, is this a disciplinary issue? And then from there, again, what are they going to get? Are they going to get retraining? Are they going to get a letter of reprimand? Are they going to get something else besides that? I think I would go to the town administrator once I had at least my first inkling of what's going on. At least have an idea, so that way I can go to the town administrator and say, well, I think this person's having a substance abuse problem, or I think they're having a mental health problem, or I think they're having a domestic problem at home. So that, because the first question the town administrator is going to ask is, well, why do you think this is going on? And if I go, geez, I have no idea, well, it's going to be, could you find out and get back to me? So this way, together with the town administrator, you can come up with a course of action, because at that point, what's going to end up happening, no matter what action you're going to take, it's inevitably going to involve the union into that. So, and also probably HR, town administrator, and the Board of Selectmen. regardless of what that issue is, they're going to end up being involved in it in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Next question will come from Mr. Singer.
There seems to be a lot of anger towards police in some areas of the country. What do you believe are the best ways to maintain a positive relationship with the community?
I think it has to be active outreach to the community. I think you have to use every tool that's available to you. You have to use your social media, you have to use your website, and you have to use programs. That's why these programs were so important to this department many years ago, especially like a Citizens Police Academy, and such as a school resource. People knew us all by name. They knew who we were. They knew that we lived in town. They saw us at the stores. I don't know how many times I'd go into a store and it was, "Hey, Officer Cludier, how you doing?" And I'd be just in blue jeans and a T-shirt. They knew who we were. They had a face that they could make a connection with. A lot of that's leaving. The only connection that they have with us now is the days that I show up at their domestic or that I show up at their car accident. They don't know us. They don't have a connection with us. If you can build a connection with these people, if you can build a face-to-face and I know who you are, so that's going to build. It's going to build on the trust, and it's going to build on the police department going forward and flourishing.
Thank you. Ms. Noble has your next question.
Under Massachusetts law, the chief in each town issues a license to carry, also known as an LTC, and FID cards, and also have the authority to issue restrictions on licenses to carry. Could you share your philosophy on the Second Amendment and the issuance of LTCs for all lawful purposes, including concealed carry to residents?
Yeah, I actually used to do the pistol permits here in town for several years. The law's changed over time since 2008. We used to get paper FID cards, and they lasted forever. So somebody could get an FID card and it never expired. Well, then all of a sudden, now they expire, and all these people are coming in to get them. But they also created two separate types of licenses to carry. They created a Class A, and they created a Class B. The Class B did not allow you to carry concealed. We kind of stayed away from that. We kind of stayed away from the Class Bs at the time, and I think it was a good idea because a lot of people didn't even understand it. They didn't even understand the law and everything. Since then, they've actually eliminated the Class B, and they went back to the old system where you have just a license to carry, Class A, all lawful purposes. They used to put restrictions, or they tried to put restrictions back where there would be like sporting and hunting or something like, or personal protection. They used to kind of put them on there. And what happened is the law doesn't really allow for that. It does and it doesn't. What happens is if I'm a chief and I put down, say, sporting and hunting, and they use it for something other than that, what ends up happening is the really only recourse you have is to call them in and try and take the license away from them. So it's not like a criminal charge or anything like that. So what we try to do is we issue all lawful purposes and explain to them, this is the law. So whatever you can lawfully do with it, follow the law. And, if somebody's got a clean background and somebody's never been in trouble, I have no problem with issuing. As a matter of fact, we've actually had people, when we had this law changed, that people found themselves were ineligible for a pistol permit that had pistol permits for 20 years because there was a change in the law. They would have, like a first offense, it changed the law, first offense OUI prevents you from getting a pistol permit. So when I would do my pistol permits with these people and I would see some of these things come up, I actually work with them to try and resolve their criminal cases by what was called a revise and revoke. So you'd have a guy that from 1974 did something, and he had a clean record his whole life, but now, because the law changed, now he can no longer have a pistol permit. We would send him back. We'd hook him up with an attorney, bring him before their judge, do a revise and revoke, clean his record, issue him a license, no problem.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson, I know you asked the question earlier, we were going to ask all candidates. Could you please ask that question again?
I do, thank you. Sergeant Cody, we've had some issues over the past 2-3 years with effectively and efficiently managing the police detail accounts, getting billing done in a timely manner, getting collections done in a timely manner, and actually reconciling the account. Could you give us your thoughts on how you would oversee and manage that?
Yeah, I know partially about it, and my opinion was it was obviously a lack of oversight. I'm not sure how you can get to the point of being, I'm not sure how many years, 5, 10 years off on some of your money. But you obviously have to have the right personnel in that position that's able to oversee and be able to do billing and to know what they're doing. If you don't have that right off the bat, you're not going to be able to manage this. You also, from a supervisor's standpoint or a chief's standpoint, you have to have somebody that's going to oversee that person and somebody that's going to be able to say, hey, this is going sideways. We're already a month or two into this and we're already bleeding money. I could see us having a backlog on detail money because it does take time for, a few weeks, 6, 7, or 8 weeks. But when we're talking years and years of backlog, I mean, that's completely unacceptable. And at some point in time, because don't forget, the taxpayers, if this money doesn't come in, the taxpayers pays for this. The taxpayers pays for these details. So Mass Electric and all these other companies that hired these people, if they don't pay it, the taxpayers pays this money because it comes out of their account. So I think at some point in time, you're going to have to put the brakes on the details. The other thing is we do have court systems. We do have the ability to take a company to court if they don't pay. We do have the ability to take somebody to small claims court. Once they start getting summonses, some of these companies, and say, hey, wait a second, you owe us $4,000 for details or whatever. But the key is don't let it get that far. Don't let it build up to $15,000 because now you're talking large claims court. If I have a detail and I'm only owed $2,000 or $3,000, I can go right down to Dudley District Court, file for a small claims action against even National Grid. You can file it against anybody you want. So that's an avenue too. And I think if you do that, these people that are hiring details are probably going to get the message that, oh, wait a second, I now have to hire a lawyer to go represent us even in a stupid small claims court action.
Thank you. We have a couple brief moments for follow-up. Open up to the board. Mr. McGrath or Mr. Swenson, do you have a follow-up question?
I'm going to continue on the same vein that I asked the last candidate, and Sergeant Cloutier has hit on some of this a little bit more. But my question, Keith, is the school resource officer. Where would they spend most of their time?
I think what we need to do is we need to talk to Bay Path and to the Dudley Charlton. And what we need to do is, because obviously we have two large school systems in here, that I think with the combination of the two, we should be able to find something between the two where we can kind of get together. And even if we get a partial payment from these, and then what we can do is say, well, the office is going to spend so much time in the elementary school, the middle school, and up at Bay Path, and have different programs throughout the week in each one of them school systems. The other thing is during the summertime, we used to run programs. We used to take the kids out, like doing kayaking. You can have cops and kids programs. We do have an Explorer unit. Our Explorer unit right now is pretty big and it's pretty active. But the Explorer unit is actually being run by somebody that, our Officer McGrath, he volunteers to do that. He's not getting paid to do any of that. He does it, he's done it for years, he does a great job with it, but he doesn't get paid for that. And I would love to see, say we have something where a school resource officer, that would be great, say come in the summertime or on off hours or whatever, to be able to work with Officer McGrath, maybe take some of the slack off of him, who's doing this by himself, and be able to help, say, with the Explorers unit. And then also what that would do is, as people move up and move out, and we cycle people in, you now have somebody else to take over. You have somebody else to take over these programs. Because that's really what it's about. It's about being able to bring up the next set of people, to be able to take over and have smooth transitions is really what you want.
Thank you. And I think that's all the time we have, so thank you, Sergeant Cloutier. I appreciate your time and your answers tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Give us a quick second just to write down any last notes.
I'm going to lift that up just a little bit.
At the end, when you're doing the tabulations, we have a moment just to like make a statement.
Yeah.
Someone's got to add it all up.
All right, is everyone ready for our final candidate? Jessica's going to take some time to tabulate everything, right?
Yeah, we won't take long. They're emailing it to me, and I'm going to go in and print out their email and just give it to them.
Hi.
Welcome, Sergeant Maxfield. Thank you for coming here tonight.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. We'll give you a chance to have a brief introduction, and then we will go over some questions.
Okay.
Oh, and please be aware that on the line next to you is Selectman Swenson and Selectman McGrath, who are participating
Hi, guys.
remotely.
Hey, how's it going?
So far, so good, but I've only been here about 30 seconds.
So at this time, I ask you to please give a brief introduction.
I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm Sergeant Graham Maxfield. Worked here for 20 years. I have 33 years in law enforcement, and just humbled to be here in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we each take turns asking questions. These are questions asked to each candidate. At the end, we will perhaps ask some quick follow-up questions to your answers. So question number one. How would you describe your leadership style? How would you describe your approach to policing?
My leadership style is largely situational. It depends on what's going on. Sometimes you can be a transformational guy. You can ask for input. You have time to see what other people think. Other times, in a crisis situation or something, you have to turn on your authoritative hat and just make decisions. So I would say I'm a situational guy, but with an authoritative streak.
Thank you. Next question will come from Selectman Singer.
With the increase in traffic flow in Charlton, a concerning issue is one of public safety, with increased risk of serious accidents and the potential for delays in public safety vehicles moving through town when this occurs. As chief, how would you address the public safety issue, and what resources and parties would you bring together to mitigate the impact of this traffic?
With Treehouse and 508, we've seen an increase in cars. Can be over an 8 or 10 hour period of almost 7,000 cars. I think initially we need to talk to the state, maybe do a traffic survey, talk to the engineers, see what they think. I would certainly like to see a dedicated traffic car to that area, so that we could get Route 20, Brookfield Road, maybe Stafford Street known as a high traffic enforcement area. Because what we want to do is strive for voluntary compliance, people, obeying the speed limits, and so those are the kinds of things that, we'd have to, bring in the experts and see, what we could do to mitigate that, to keep the community safe.
Thank you. Your next question will come from Ms. Noble.
Good evening.
Hi.
If you were chosen as the new police chief for our community, what do you feel are the top priorities for the next few months, the first year, and over the next 5 years?
The first few months would be structure, getting that in place. We also want to work on getting a handle on the budget and payroll and detail billing, those kind of things. In the next 3, we're talking probably regional dispatch, and getting another community on board so we can make that a reality. And 5 years would be, of course, the public safety complex, and we're all very excited about that.
Thank you. I will ask the next question. What do you consider your greatest asset or strength that you would bring to this position?
3 decades of experience. I've committed my life to public service, and I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve this community, as I have for the last 20 years.
Thank you. The next question will come from Mr. Singer.
Sorry. In what areas do you have limited exposure or experience and feel it would be necessary to enhance your knowledge if you become the police chief?
I would learn a little bit more about budgets, because I think that that's priority one. The biggest way we're going to get in trouble is not to live within our budget, and but I always default to the expert in the room. If I have somebody who's smarter than me in any area, you can be assured that that will be the person that will be handling whatever the matter, whatever the issue is.
Thank you. The next question will come from Ms. Noble.
Hypothetically speaking, the town administrator has directed you to cut 5% from your budget. In order of priority, please tell us what you would cut and your rationale for making those decisions.
Well, that's a difficult decision to make. Most of our budget is salary. We pay people, that's what we do. But you want to spread the cuts across the budget, see, look at it carefully, see where you can find little things, little pieces here and there, little numbers add up to be big numbers kind of thing. So obviously it would have to come from salaries, overtime, and those types of things, because that's the lion's share of our money.
Thank you. I will have your next question. This is a scenario. You are informed by several officers that they have a concern about one of their colleagues because he has acted irrationally towards members of the public and other officers. They indicate to you that he has a temper that flares instantaneously and then he snaps back to normal behavior. As chief, what course of action, if any, would you take? At what point would you consult with the town administrator?
Well, the action I would take, first I would try to find what the underlying problem was, and I would certainly try to get that employee some anger management or EAP kind of thing. As far as the town administrator is concerned, I really feel like she needs to know what's going on in that building. She does not want to be surprised if somebody approaches her outside and asks her that same question. So I would get her involved very early on in the process.
Thank you. Next question will come from Mr. Singer.
There seems to be a lot of anger towards police in some areas of the country. What do you believe are the best ways to maintain a positive relationship with the community?
The best way is to build trust and be seen as legitimate, and how you do that is through positive non-enforcement engagement. People only see us when we're giving them tickets, or we're serving them summonses, or their house has been broken into. We need to do the things, we need to engage with them outside of that. Citizens Police Academy, Coffee with a Cop, those types of things, and I would hope to implement things like that.
Thank you. Ms. Noble has your next question.
Under Massachusetts law, the chief in each town issues licenses to carry, also known as LTCs, and FID cards, and also have the authority to issue restrictions on licenses to carry. Could you share your philosophy on the Second Amendment and the issuance of LTCs for all lawful purposes, including concealed carry to residents?
I wholeheartedly support the Second Amendment as far as license to carry. We have some of the strictest laws in the nation, and I believe if somebody meets the criteria and they jump through all the hoops that the state requires, that they should be issued a license to carry a concealed firearm.
Thank you. The last question will be asked by Mr. Swenson. This is the question he asked earlier to the candidates. I would ask him to begin.
Thank you, Sergeant for the past number of years with the effective and efficient management of our detail account, both in making sure billing is done correctly and timely and that collections are done correctly and timely. Could you give us your thoughts on how that could be better managed?
Yes, sir. We've taken steps to do some personnel changes. Chief Charette has put in some processes in place to make sure that that going forward, that we stay in collection in a timely manner. And it's also my understanding that the new person that is doing that is also recovering monies. I know I saw a check the other day for like $11,000 that had come back into the town. So I would make, again, as my previous answer, that the budget would be my top priority, and I consider that part of the budget, that the billing and payroll would be a priority.
Thank you. Well, we'll now take this time to open it up to the selectmen for any follow-up questions. I will begin with the first
Through the
one.
chair.
Mr. Graff, I will go first, and then we'll go to you. In your question number 3 about...
Through the chair.
Mr. Graff?
The question that I asked the other candidates was on the school resource officer. Sergeant Mansfield, could you tell me where you believe the school resource officer, if reinstated, where would they be spending most of their time?
I'd like to have one in every school, but I believe if you're talking a straight school resource officer, the elementary grades is what I think is best suited for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In your answers to, for your...
I have one follow-up if I could, please.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He said he had a follow-up.
I have one follow-up if I could, please.
Mrs. Swenson, could you speak a little louder?
I will, thank you. Sergeant Maxfield, you touched briefly on some things that I would fall under the category of community policing. Could you expand on that a little bit and how you see your thoughts as to the importance of community policing and other things that we could do, taking the budget constraints into consideration?
Well, the idea of community policing, we don't have to really do any special programs. On-duty officers, if we have an extra body, to go into the senior center and say hello, maybe appoint somebody as a liaison to the Masonic home, an elder affairs person, again on shift, to spend a few minutes when we're not busy. I think we can do a lot with the existing monies that we have to just do some more positive engagement. And those are the kinds of things, the coffee with a cop, just, you're driving through during patrol, you see somebody that you know, you stop in there and say hello kind of thing, see what their concerns are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As your question to what your priorities are for the first few months, you mentioned structure, creating a structure. Could you please elaborate on that, what you mean by structure and how would you approach that?
Chief Charette has given us a good, solid base these last 9 months, and we just need to continue on with the little things that we do, the discipline things, and when I say discipline, I mean haircut, shine boots, squared away uniforms, projecting that image, a positive image, making sure that people have a clear and concise understanding of what's expected of them, and holding people accountable for what they're supposed to do.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions from the board?
Yes.
Ms. Noble?
Because I don't have your resume in front of me, can you please tell me what your educational background is?
Yep. I graduated high school in 1981.
Me too.
I spent 3 years in the United States military. I joined the police force right out of the Army, 1984. I worked for the Norton Police until 1996. I transferred out here to Charlton in 1997. Put myself through Western New England College. I've also attended Babson College, the New England Institute for Law Enforcement Management, the command training program. I'm a graduate of that as well. I'm also an adjunct instructor at the Smith & Wesson Academy. I also have a teaching certificate from the Department of Education in firearms-related programs. I also have many, too many to list over the years, 33 years of other certificates and other trainings that I've attended. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath, do you have any other follow-up questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Swenson, do you have any follow-up questions?
I'm set, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Singer? Ms. Noble?
No, thank you.
I'm all set. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
So, at this time, we would ask you to consider your notes and do a final ranking. The remote participants, if you can email to my email your rankings, overall rankings, I will go get them and take a 5-minute break.
Thank you. And also, I would recommend...
Robin, I just sent you mine.
I'm sorry, was that...
And
I'm sorry, one at a time. Mr. Swenson first.
It went to your Town of Charlton account.
Hold on.
Could we, Mr. Chair, could we move the phone back up to the main table?
Yep, we are moving you as we speak. I'm sorry. Mr. Swenson first.
Excuse me?
Mrs. Swenson, you may go.
Okay, I think that we have 3 good candidates. I sent my ranking over to the town administrator. Do you want me to tell you how I went?
No, not right now. Well, give us, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to compile our notes so we can compare everything.
Yep. Okay, yeah, I think they all did well. In my mind, there was a pretty clear difference, and...
Okay. Yep, Mrs. Swenson, I ask you, please keep your comments. We will talk about them when we reconceive from recess.
Reconvene.
So, reconvene. Thank you. We'll now take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. We are back. We have tabulated the scores. Before we make the announcement, and I will bring up 2 comments and a motion. Just want to thank everyone again, all 3 candidates. It's just amazing how much talent we have in our own force, and that either way, we don't lose. Charlton wins either way. So there was one clear winner, and we'll announce that shortly. Once again, thank you to the Police Search Committee, everyone involved, Mr. Renz, the Town Administrator, Chief Charette, Mr. Peters, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. It's been a long process, but we finally reached a conclusion. Mr. Singer?
Can I add a quick comment?
Sure, absolutely.
So yeah, I'd like to thank the 5 candidates, because there were 5 that applied for the job. And that's the reality, is that we had 5 candidates. We actually have more, but we could take 5. But the bottom line was, all 5 candidates were highly capable, very intelligent, and in many regards, our hands are tied in how we go through this process. So we wound up with 5 candidates, all of whom would have made a great chief. We could deal with 3 today, all of whom will make a great chief, whoever we choose. I thought every one of them gave intelligent, coherent answers, and I'm proud that they're on this department and that we get to have this evening with them. I also want to thank all the people on the police department, because the patrolmen put up with us through this. Everyone did. And I know they all have a vested interest, because, as one position moves, so do the rest. So I had a lot of time to kill on the way home from Connecticut today, and I talked for about almost an hour with the assessment center people. And I got a lot of feedback, and I learned a lot from them about the next time we have to go through this, which is hopefully not for a while, but how we can make this process even better and more thorough. But again, we have an amazing police department. We had 5 amazing candidates, and we had 3 that came before us tonight, that all of whom showed their intelligence and capacity to do this job, every single one of them. I was impressed with all of your answers and the way you carried yourselves.
Absolutely. So,
Would you like to name the other 2 officers, since their name hasn't been brought up and thank them personally?
Am I allowed to without getting in trouble?
I think
Lieutenant Lewandowski and Sergeant Mason were the other 2 candidates. And I feel that both of you also were very highly qualified and great candidates for this job as well.
And we're lucky to keep them in the department.
Yes, and thankful for everything that all of you do for this town.
Ms. Graber?
Yes, sir. So we've tallied the scores, and I will say in reverse order of the number one person. So in number 3 was Danny Dowd, number 2 was Keith Cloutier, and the number 1 ranked is Graham Maxfield.
So then I'll entertain a motion from the board. There's a recommended motion in our memorandum that the town manager and I both came up with, just for starting salary and starting time. Ms. Noble?
Through the chair. I move to appoint Graham S. Maxfield to the position of police chief beginning Monday, October 2nd, 2017, pending a successful salary negotiation by the town administrator in conjunction with Human Resources.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Mr. McGrath or Mr. Swenson, do you have any discussion?
No.
All right, seeing no discussion, I'll move to a roll call vote. Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And the fun begins.
Right here for 1 moment, please. Oh, thank you.
Everybody in?
Oh, we can do everybody. Okay, sure. Oh, no.
I'm going to stand up here because I'm short.
Oh, that's
Photoshop
beautiful.
John and
That's
Megan
perfect,
later.
perfect, Miss Graver. Thank you. Beautiful.
This way over here.
So can you meet your wife?
Yes.
Is that your wife in tears?
It is.
That's my wife in tears back there. My wife, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Every time chiefs don't know what to say, they call their wife.
Well, welcome.
Oh, that's so nice.
I feel like I should hug you.
It's okay, congratulations.
Can we get a picture
Thank
of
you for letting
your
us
wife
have it.
there?
Okay.
It is an important piece to honor the wife because you're the one that waits while he comes.
You ready? May I say, just so the selectmen know what we're doing is
If you want, Chief, you want to speak?
No, I was speaking with the town clerk, I don't want to take time on you. And what we'd like to do is have a pinning ceremony for the chief at whatever we can set up for next week, and of course, we'll invite everybody there.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, thank you.
Again, congratulations. Again, thank you all the candidates who were part of the process and all the people involved to get to this point. It's been a long process. We talked about this for 2-3 years now, so it's a long journey that's finally coming to an end. So once again, thank you and congratulations. Mr. McGrath and Mr. Swenson, are you sticking around?
No, I'm gonna sign off also, Joe.
All right, thank you. So please note that Mr. McGrath and Mrs. Swenson have left the meeting at 8:38 p.m.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen. With that, we'll go to our fourth item under new business. I'm sorry, our first item under new business, since we skipped over it last time, was with Brendan Grove for the 0-point solar arrays request for pilot.
And Brendan is here.
Ms. Graber, when you're ready.
Yes, sir. I received an email from Brendan Grove, President and CEO of 0-Point Solar Array, asking to hold a discussion regarding the town's ability to enter into a standard pilot agreement and handle personal property taxation for solar arrays in the community. He feels a pilot agreement would be advantageous for both the town and himself, both to secure the revenue for the town and for him to lock in a known rate. I forwarded his email to the Board of Assessors for their recommendation. They discussed this at their meeting on September 5th, and they voted that the Board of Assessors would not be in favor of any new pilot agreements for the town of Charlton, whether it be solar arrays or other entities. They have exhausted many hours over the past 17 years with the Millennium Pilot. I notified Mr. Grove that the Board of Assessors would clearly advocate that the town continue to assess the real estate and property based on the tax rate. I explained that this would be their recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, who would have final say on any possible negotiated pilot. Mr. Grove stated that they are familiar with the issues the town has had with accepting and administering pilots in the past. However, given recent cases solidifying the exception of solar property from taxation, they wanted to give the town the opportunity to receive payments for the property that the town is otherwise prohibited from taxing. And he's attached a case that he is referring to. Mrs. Ciccarini responded back to Mr. Grove's statement above. She said the Board of Assessors looks at each of these cases on an individual basis with 3 sets of eyes. It's all about the third party and the type of ownership with these agreements. Never allowed for possibility of a solar. The way the existing statute is written, it basically never allowed for the possibility of a solar array to be built for profit under commercial use on residential property. So as long as the owners has a percentage of the energy going back to them, the ATB had no choice but to deem it exempt. 0 Point has built many solar arrays in Charlton and continues to go for permitting for new ones. She said if you look at each building permit, planning board site plan, copies of each owner's lease, it states for commercial solar energy generation. The landowners are receiving annual payments for the lease of land. There are no secondary agreements from the owner to sell any portion of the electricity to another entity or to receive any electricity for their own residential use to her knowledge. In the case that Mr. Grove cited, KTT LLC, Swansea and Barry, also the taxpayer owned the land on which the net metered solar project was constructed. The project generated net metering credits, only 2% of which were allocated to the residential bills of the taxpayer owner. 98% which were allocated to the electricity bills of several branches of commercial banks located in different towns. Still, the ATB determined that solar project clearly met the standard under Clause 45. Because of these ATB decisions, it is important that each new project going forward in Charlton should be clearly examined. However, it is her understanding that each solar array currently being taxed to Mr. Grove's various LLCs are 100% being sold to commercial entities. The taxpayer owner of the leased land in Charlton is receiving annual lease payments, no electricity to their homes. Mr. Grove respectfully disagrees with Mrs. Ciccarini. He stated that the exemption from property tax on solar systems is not dependent on whether the operator of the system is for profit or not for profit. The exemption is provided under the general laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 45, which is attached. He requested to meet with the board. And is that, I think, sums it up well? And
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Grove. If you could start, just give me your full name into the microphone for the minutes and your address.
Sure, absolutely. So for the record, my name is Brendan Gove. The company is 0 Point Development. We're out of Rutland, Massachusetts. So over the past 4 or 5 years, we've built a handful of projects in Charlton and in 16 other neighboring communities. And just as a background, 0 Point is an organic developer of solar arrays. So we sign options to purchase or lease land from landowners. We develop the projects through the utility company process. We permit it, obviously, with the municipalities. We provide financing. We sell the electricity to customers who buy the net metering credits by virtual net metering policy set up by the state of Massachusetts. And we provide long-term operation and maintenance and ownership of the arrays. There's, I guess, 2 different financing paths that we go. We finance and own projects, and we also finance and bring in a third-party partner and partner joint venture with the ownership of that. So just to continue on what Ms. Craver mentioned there. So recently, within the past 6 to 8 months, there's been additional clarity provided with case law that's providing some more guidance on how to handle personal property taxes for solar arrays. And of the 16 communities that we work with, 15 out of 16, we were able to come to an agreement to sign a payment in lieu of tax agreement. The only one of which we haven't been able to thus far is with the town of Charlton. So I guess the goal of this meeting was to open up the dialogue and try to understand, the hurdles that are in front of us to try to negotiate such an agreement, if possible, and get your thoughts on what the next steps would be.
Thank you. Any comments from the board, Ms. Craver? Ms. Noble?
I just want to state for the record that I'm generally not in favor of the pilot program. I don't think it in the long term, I don't think it benefits the town nearly as much as it benefits the business or the nonprofit or the for-profit. So tell me, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts regarding pilot? What's the percentage? What's the amount? I want to talk some real numbers here.
Sure. So in the email correspondence that we had with Ms. Ciccarini, she had proposed in the realm of $16,500 per megawatt, so per year. So for the typical arrays, we build around 2 megawatts AC. That would be in the $33,000 per range, which from our experience seems to be substantially out of market. For an example, the town of Barry had a similar, process that they had gone through in learning more about, the legalities in their position to assess a personal property tax, and they ended up signing a pilot agreement for $3,000 per year for 6 megawatts, so effectively $500 per megawatt. So in the realm of, dollars and cents, I think that those are probably our upper and lower bounds. I'm not saying $500 per megawatt works for you or would work for this relationship, but certainly $16,500 does not work for us. And then just as further background, so 0 Point, we're developers, but really 0 Point is a, we're an advisor for an investment committee. So basically, we've acquired hard money lenders, long-term debt providers, long-term tax equity providers, and we invest for them. So when we invest money, and we are one of the investors ourselves, we finance projects, and my shareholders and investors come to me and say, Brendan did a great job in the town of Spencer, the town of Leicester, what's going on with the, in negotiating pilot rates, and they prefer to know what the pilot rate is going to be for the next 20 years. How come you can't do that in Charlton? So that's really where we are right now is I'm at a fork in the road with my internal shareholders where I need to provide them answers and clarity on how this is going to work. Otherwise, the options would be, to pursue whatever legal rights we have to defend our cash position in those projects.
Question, a clarifying question. The $16,500 per megawatt, was that the assessed value, or is that what Ms. Ciccarini said would be the pilot?
So I believe that would be the effective annual payment due to the town of Charlton. So, and I don't mean to speak for Deb, but effectively they look at an income approach and a value approach, a cost approach. So by way of those two methodologies, that's basically what it would have come out to be.
Is this your first proposed development in Charlton?
We have 11 projects in Charlton. So of the 11 projects, we have 3 more that we'd like to build in the next 18 months.
So you currently have how many in Charlton constructed?
11.
11 constructed. Why is this coming to our board now to search for the pilot, and why wasn't this pursued earlier?
So I think we have tried working through the Board of Assessors to pursue the pilot arrangement. But quite honestly, the KTT law, the developer in Swansea is represented by Attorney Bernier out of Darrow and Everett out of Rhode Island. So they're our law firm. They do our corporate law and our tax negotiations. So when we were financing a 19-project portfolio, dialogue between Darrow and Everett and the town of Charlton transpired, and that obviously did not go anywhere. So I think it's just now at the point where I'm here trying to talk to you about the situation, to come to a commercial resolution prior to, us seeking other relief.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any comments? Ms. Kramer?
I think one of my concerns was something that you just brought up, which they've been here. They have 10, 11 arrays. And how many years, Brendan, have you been here? I remember your first one.
It was the first. Charlton was really the start of the company at Curtis Hill Road, and that was in 2010 we started developing that. 2009 we started developing it, and we came before you in 2010, 11. So Charlton for me is a soft spot because, the town has been, foundational for me and my learning process as a developer. It's been fantastic. So I'm not here holding your feet to the fire in any way. I'm just here to have a conversation because I want what's best for everybody. Honestly, I do.
So I remember when you did start, and I remember conversations about, with the assessors, and I remember conversations with you talking about taxes versus pilots, and that the town was more interested in keeping it tax-based versus doing a pilot. And my impression and memory was that you were very aware that that's what the stance was of Charlton, and that we wanted to continue that way, and that was okay for the first few years in getting a lot of these arrays up. And I understand that you believe that maybe there's some changes in the law, but I think from what I'm hearing you talk about, the difference in the payments, it feels like, so how would you answer if people are listening, saying, you've made promises here to Charlton, you've come in, they've opened their arms, they've helped you work and build nearly a dozen solar arrays, and now your proposal would reduce that 80% or more for the tax benefit to Charlton. And how would you do that to be fair?
So I think that's a fair question. So I guess I would start and say that I didn't make any proposals or commitments or promises. I think that's an inaccurate statement. And honestly, what's transpired in this past 6 months, providing additional clarity on how towns should or should not handle pilots is what we're talking about. So the reality was that it was a gray matter in how to handle this situation. And certainly conversations transpired to understand the town's stance and our stance. But I would just honestly say that my request for the town to handle the situation within the confines of the law, I don't think is an unreasonable request. And I think that's where the difference in opinion is what is the law and how do you handle this situation? So I think that's what we're talking about.
Ms. Noble, do you have a question?
Yeah, you have 11 projects here in Charlton,
Correct, yep.
and they're taxed accordingly. There's no pilot program in place for any of these?
There is no pilot agreement for any of those projects, correct?
Okay. And ballpark it, what were the taxes, the property taxes paid last year? Do you have that?
I don't know. I can, if you would humor me for just 1 second, I can.
Of course.
You know what, I can get that number for you. I can get that number for you, just so I don't speak out of turn.
So what would the difference be? Because there would be a difference between what was paid and what the pilot would bring in.
I think that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
So
So you have a number in mind of what you want to pay for the pilot?
Yep, so the $6,500 per megawatt DC seems to be where the market is settling in. Now, my hesitation is whether or not, the pilot agreement includes real property taxes or not, and those are all things that, would take a lengthy negotiation to figure out how that would work, so.
Okay.
So I'm not going to claim to be an expert on taxation and assessment. I trust our assessors. They're certified. That's what they do as their job. I think working with them, possibly offline to negotiate. I'm not sure, Ms. Craver, if you would want to be involved in that negotiation process.
What negotiation for what? Are you entertaining an actual pilot, or are you
No, to
talking about
determining-
having them conversations?
Having a conversation on what was legally required.
In my conversation with Mrs. Ciccarini, she did say that she's been watching very closely with her association on what's happening, and she'll continue to do that and work with them certainly as much as she can.
Y'all look at me like, I don't have a lot to say about solar. So, what I will say, which is not a positive or negative for you, is I won't comment for or against the pilot tonight, but I would like to actually hear from Ms. Ciccarini. I would have liked her to be here. I'd like to hear from them. So
So
I'm
if
not
you would
saying
like
yes, I'm
to-
not saying no either.
We have
but I-
also received several emails in
I've read
regards to
them.
this as well, so.
I'd still like to have a conversation with her.
Okay.
Even if I have it with her myself, I'd like to have a conversation with her about some of the emails and about what we're being asked to do.
So would you like to do some more research on this and then have Brendan come back at your next meeting, or in 2 meetings? I don't know what you're doing with the special town meeting, but.
Right, sorry.
So-
And also, there is an issue where Mrs. Ciccarini will be out for several weeks, but I can also check and see if you can talk with her one-on-one
Yes,
by
I'd like
giving her a
to
call.
talk to her before she's gone.
And we certainly could invite the board members to come if they would be willing. Otherwise, I would recommend that you defer this until Mrs. Ciccarini gets back from her
How long will
leave.
that be?
I do not know. I can find out and I'll let
So
you know.
I'd like to know, because out
I
of
wanna say
fairness to
it's 6
us,
weeks or
and out of
something.
fairness to him as well, it'd be nice to know, is it, 2 weeks, 2 years, 2 months?
My understanding is maybe 6 weeks.
So it's
The
not that
recovery,
bad.
it's not. Get us past town meeting and then we can come back and
So basically, you'd have a meeting, town meeting, and then she'd be back.
should be.
Ms.
So
Noble?
it's not that bad.
For me, it's very hard for me to move forward on this unless I have the precise numbers. And I want to be able to compare, a cost-benefit analysis here as to the difference between what we're currently taking in and what a 20-year pilot program would look like.
I think that would be a fantastic next step. So if
Me
you're
too.
willing to entertain, what our proposal would be, then I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, because unless we get the actual numbers, we don't know what we're talking about here. We need those numbers.
Great.
Mr.
We
Singer?
can do that.
Maybe he can bring them the same time we plan that for the next meeting discussion.
So if you'd like, I can check with Mrs. Ciccarini the first week that she's back. Your first meeting, we'll set up the time. And Brendan, would that give you enough time to be able to put together a proposal? for the
Yeah,
board,
absolutely,
So they
absolutely, no
understand a
problem.
little bit more what you're proposing?
And from my research with this, it seems that it's not black and white, and that there's still gray area, and it's obviously not clear. And I think more research would help both sides.
Definitely, especially since you've been here for such a long time, we can actually see from beginning to now, a good span of time, what that money represents.
Sure.
So I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grove. I believe the town administrator will work with you offline to schedule any further next steps.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks for your patience.
With that, we'll move on to item number 4 under new business, and that's the common vic license for change of owner for Honey Farms, number 88. Ms.
Yes,
Craver?
We received a request from Global Montello Group Corporation that they will be acquiring the property at 36 through 38 Worcester Road, currently as Honey Farms Number 88, which was previously owned by Honey Farms Incorporated. They are changing the owner's name from Honey Farms Incorporated to Global Montello Group, and the store number will change from number 88 to number 2761. This is brought to you for informational only, and a new license with the change of owner and store number are in your sign folder. All else remains the same. There is no cost for this change to the owner. No action is needed by the board.
Thank you. I would just make sure that we reach out and just let them know what our policies are, what our contact people are. If they have any questions, just, be neighborly and welcome
Absolutely.
the change.
And I believe Mrs. Devlin has been doing that in her usual friendly manner.
Perfect. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
Nope.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5 on our new business then. That's the change to biweekly payroll and weekly warrant. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. The financial management team was formed as a result of the financial policies and management recommendations that were presented as part of the Town of Charlton's Community Compact study. The team is made up of the finance director, the HR director, treasurer collector, the director of assessing, and myself. We are having regular meetings and reviewing financial policies. One of the recommendations in the financial management study was the conversion of payroll to biweekly. Since the same employees are being paid every week, it can be assumed that there is a 50% savings in the time and effort that is involved with processing payroll biweekly, as opposed to weekly. As noted by the attached memo, the team would like to request the Board of Selectmen support change to biweekly payroll with an effective date of January 1st, 2018. This date was selected as payroll is driven by calendar year, and that would also provide ample time for all personnel to be notified of this change, and any needed discussions with the unions can be completed. Also, accounts payable is processed biweekly, and many times emergency accounts payable warrants are being produced on the off weeks. There's no savings in the time and effort to pay the accounts payable biweekly, since the vendors change every warrant. There are just twice as many vendors to process every other week. The team would like to request the Board of Selectmen support the change of accounts payable to every week so that the town can avoid fines and late charges being assessed for late payments and allow departments to take advantage of discounts for quick payments. We would like to make this change in conjunction of the payroll, change in payroll on January 1st, 2018.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. And just to clarify, basically the structure we have right now is the opposite of that. We have payroll every week, and then the other warrant, the accounts payable, every 2 weeks.
Correct, and we're asking to flip those.
Mr. Singer?
And I do have a concern, and it was also brought to my attention, which is the concern which Ms. Craver pointed out, is that we can't do this without the unions, but you have to have every union. So we'd have to have police, fire, highway, clerical, buy-in from every single one before we take this to town meeting. It seems like we're putting this out there
It
now.
doesn't need to go to town meeting.
I thought you said you wanted it on a town meeting warrant.
No, we're talking about the warrant payables, billable warrants, those kind of warrants, we don't, not town meeting.
Okay, so
So
that- all right.
what you could do is vote to move this proposal forward, contingent upon working with the unions.
Okay, so we could make, okay, that's fine, as long as it was obviously had that contingency. 'Cause I
We
know this has to
absolutely
be-
expect that.
Has to be bargained, okay.
Ms.
And,
Craver, would that be impact bargaining?
I was just going to say, we'll take a look at whether or not that's impact or mandatory. Since it actually affects the paychecks, it may be mandatory, but I would check with council on that.
Yeah, I think it, I think it will be.
I think this does help definitely town out. There's some real savings there, especially with time, effort, and money. Any other questions from the board?
And I do want to say, the unions have been very supportive when we've come up with something that's not harmful to them if they're not terribly objective, and it saves us time or money, or helps us have efficiencies. They've been open to having that conversation with us.
And that teamwork is, definitely appreciated and helps make Charlton, helps make Charlton work, especially through the rough times. So what are the wishes of the board then?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Singer?
I would move that the board support this so long as we have the union support through bargaining and that the unions are on board to support it.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
If it's impact bargaining and not mandatory bargaining, which I'm not clear, if it's impact, you could make the motion to direct us to, make the motion and then direct us to bargain. That might be a stronger motion. And if I have to come back and find out it's mandatory, then we could come back. Otherwise, only takes one union to stop it, if it's not mandatory.
So why don't we just hold off 2 weeks then and find out what it is first?
Do you want to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think just like with everything else, whether it's a pilot or something else, we should know what we're voting on and
You
make
need
it
to, I think you
appropriate.
need to withdraw your motion, right?
Well,
So-
first thing you withdraw your second.
Oh, I withdraw my second.
So get with it. And so I'll withdraw my first.
Well,
So we'll
alrighty
have
then.
we'll have some more information for you at the next meeting on whether or
Never
not
mind.
it's mandatory.
Thank you.
And
that way
if
we'll know-
possible, maybe I'll be able to have some conversations with some of the unions, just to get a sense on if there is a large visceral,
And then we'll know exactly
no,
what approach to take.
no
and we-
big, or this
Right.
is gonna be a difficult one.
Right, and we can go down the right path. from the
Correct,
start.
yeah.
I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. You know, I think it's a very,
Yes, thank you. It's
yeah.
a good savings, obviously, if they can make it happen.
And the savings is very much on the accountant's part also. She spends a lot of time, we're paying her a lot of money to do data entry, which her time could be spent much better.
all right. Well, that then takes care of new business. We'll then move on to old business. And our only item under that is our special town meeting to finalize the warrant. Ms. Craver?
Yes. You are set to approve the final language for the special town meeting tonight. More so than in the past, this has been an active warrant that there were placeholders that the sponsors wish to hold until the annual town meeting because they were not ready to move forward. And there are some new articles that needed to be included based on some new information. The changes include Dick Vaughn requested to withdraw the stipend request and work with HR. I expect there to be either an article on the next town meeting or that they may approach you in the Finance Committee in the budget season. The Board of Assessors has withdrawn their article relative to the clerical staff. I will work with them in HR to see if there's a solution that we can, that we'll look at all positions in the bargaining unit to make sure everyone is being treated fairly. The Public Safety and Building Committee voted to defer making a request at town meeting until a site price is determined. The South Charlton Dam Committee voted to defer their warrant article until the annual town meeting, or possibly if there's a special town meeting before the annual. The Water Sewer Commission is withdrawing its placeholder for meter use and installation. The water sewer budget needs to be amended, and an article has been added. The amount in the original motion was more than what was in the accounts. The Highway Department needs an authorization for spending on the Potterville Road Bridge. It has a $500,000 grant, and we'll be using Chapter 90 monies if needed, but the superintendent will need to expend the money before the grant or Chapter 90s will be released at the end of the project. A recent hire brought to light the need to add language regarding benefits, giving new employees 30 days to enroll in their choice of benefits. We have added a zoning warrant article, bylaw change to exempt water pumps from zoning. This will help further the town in being able to purchase a portion of the Stearns property for a water pump station. DEP has given the town until October 20th to complete the land purchase. I've added the planning board as the sponsor, but that will not be official until after the hearing in 2 weeks. If they do not vote to sponsor it, we can amend on the floor to the Water Sewer Commission or the Board of Selectmen. The town planner and Chairman Starkus have been very helpful in expediting this warrant article. All other articles are as contemplated from your last meeting. Also, we are waiting for the Department of Revenue to certify free cash, and we'll bring a recommendation regarding capital items once the amount of available free cash is known. I will have capital recommendations and draft motions ready for your consideration at your next meeting. I did ask counsel if you needed to open and close the warrant, and he informed me that it is purely a formality, and by voting to accept the proposed language, you are essentially doing the same thing. I recommend the board vote to approve the warrant as presented and to authorize the town administrator to post it by this Thursday.
Thank you, Ms. Craver, and thank you for getting town council for that opinion. Right, what are the wishes of the board then, since we do have the warrant in front of us and we had a chance to review it?
I have questions, but it doesn't affect us, so I'll have to get them answered later. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
I would move to approve the warrant as presented and authorize the town administrator to post it by this Thursday.
And a second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Discussion. Feel free to ask questions now if you think they're related, or if not, we can always work on
It's
them
a
later.
question, but it's not sponsored by us, so I just have to ask my questions of someone else regarding their article.
Fair enough. Seeing no further questions, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say, Ms. Craver has, yes?
No, my lips are moving.
Yes, Ms. Craver?
Could you just add to the motion pending any word changes by council? Because we've been working on that, on this
Pending
warrant
any-
up to hours ago, so.
Pending any wording changes by council.
Not substance, just wording.
Not substance, just wording.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have an amended motion, amended second.
Second.
Thank you. Both the motion and a second have been amended. Well, really got waited for a last second there, right out of the go.
I'd like to think I know it's perfect, but I just never make that assumption.
It's never over till it's over. Any final discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. And I believe we have the warrant to sign as well tonight.
Thank you. They are in your sign folder, and since there's three of you, please be aware
Do our
that we
diligence.
need all of the signatures.
Thank you. Committee reports. Last Thursday, I attended the CMRPC Regional Southwestern District of Worcester County, where a few selectmen from other towns gathered. We had had a nice presentation from the CMRPC of how they work, what's going on, ask questions about different things such as the different capital plans. As I said, just one that's happening to Route 20. So it was a good experience. We re-elected the same delegate as last time, the selectman from Oxford. But it's a really interesting process that if we have any questions or ideas in regards to different traffic situations, such as possibly changing Route 20 by Treehouse, that it takes 5 to 10 years to actually have any major changes because of the way funding is allocated and different projects awarded. So just that we have some good friends up in CMRPC to listen to us and help us any way we can. So,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. It was a good time. But does anyone else have any committee reports?
No, I assume they understand it takes several years and many deaths to affect change.
It did expedite it.
Just want to let you guys know that the advisory committee, the marijuana advisory committee, is now full, and we're working together to come up with an acceptable date so we can all meet in the near future.
Wonderful.
I take it, did you get this email? There's an email about, hold on, did I delete it? It was about marijuana in towns. It was mailed to CMRPC. Did you get that email from them? The recreational marijuana information session email?
No.
They're doing a workshop on it.
Do you want me to forward it to you?
Yes, please.
It was related.
We
David.
definitely recommend, the committee, if they don't know about it, to attend that as well. Definitely, it's a good starting point.
It would be, if the full committee can't go, perhaps we can at least send a representative.
Or even if you can, maybe even invite representative to come to the committee.
That's a good
Either way.
idea. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Any other committee reports? Ms. Craver, your town administrator report, please?
Yes, before I start, you reminded me.
Uh-oh.
CMRPC, I attended a managers meeting. They host a quarterly meeting up there, and we had Jay Ash, the secretary, come up, and he spoke with us. One of the things that caught my attention was his conversation about the state of Massachusetts putting in the bid for Amazon.com. And I spoke with the town planner, and we put together a letter to just promote the town of Charlton. Certainly is a long shot, but we've asked him to include Charlton in that proposal. We think that we are very well situated with the Mass Pike and Route 20.
And land and taxes and all sorts of good stuff.
And they're looking for 100 acres is what I've heard, and we've got 400 to 600 acres on Route 20, so.
Yes, we do.
Thought we'd just get that email in, that letter in there as a possibility. If we get any kind of communication, I'll be back here to make it kind of official as
Thank
in your interest. So
Absolutely.
hopefully that was fine.
Yeah, I would, I think it's a great opportunity if you could, pay a little extra attention to that and make sure, that Secretary Ash has our ear. Maybe even ask our delegates in the State House to push for it as well. Because that'll be a huge score. Tell them we have Treehouse Brewery.
I did. I said it might be across the street from Treehouse Brewery. I think that's a draw for millennials. So he did say, because there were, I think it was Uxbridge and Spencer had been talking about, or two different towns had been talking about the possibility of doing something, and, Northbridge. And his comment was, if they get to go to Boston or Dallas, do you think they're coming to, and he said the name of a small town. So I think he was also giving us a reality check that, they are looking for the name recognition. But if they're in the area, and it may be more than one site, that, why not Charlton? I think we maybe have a new slogan, why not Charlton?
Why not Charlton? We're close enough to the Worcester Airport.
We are. We're within an hour of Boston, Hartford.
Yes.
Worcester, which is one of the
Providence.
same. Right.
Providence, Hartford,
Springfield.
Nashua, Boston, Springfield, all an hour or less
Didn't
away.
add Nashua in there, true. So I
Very
think
good.
we are a gem just sitting here waiting to be discovered at this point.
So Amazon,
Oh,
why not Charlton?
Okay, now my report.
Let's send them a flower arrangement that says that.
Beer arrangement.
Regarding 508 LLC, the board's last meeting, you had requested that there be time on the agenda for 508 LLC to allow them a chance to respond to the timeline we provided. We scheduled them for 7 p.m. and notified Mr. Jennings. He contacted the office on September 20th and asked to be taken off the agenda. This is just an update for the board.
Thank you very much.
Small Scale Initiatives Grant, we have been notified by the Department of Environmental Protection that the town of Charlton has been awarded a small scale initiative grant under the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program in the amount of $1,000. This grant was applied for by Kara Hemilowski on behalf of the Recycling Committee. It's a job well done, and we thank her for her efforts.
Did she get this a couple years ago as well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Website, just want to let you know that the departments have been working with Lisa Westwell, our webmaster, on updating their pages and the information on their web. So you should be seeing a difference.
I talked to CMRPC at that meeting as well. I mentioned websites because they just have experiences and different quotes with different organizations. So I think they're also a good resource to reach out to, and they gave a couple other towns as recommendations to look at to see what they did. So I
Great.
can work with you offline on that.
Thank you. Finance report, Dudley Charlton Regional School District. So Mark Abrams, the consultant that we'd hired, delivered a financial report on the Dudley Charlton Regional School District at a meeting held on September 19th at Shepherd Hill. In attendance were the school committee members, as well as Dudley and Charlton Town Selectmen and Finance Committee, as well as financial officers. There was a discussion of the school needs for the next 3 to 5 years. A committee has been formed to review the future of the school's funding requirements. The chair and vice chair for Charlton Selectmen and FinCom, along with the finance director, will attend these meetings. We are planning a meeting in the next few weeks. So
Can I ask, is anyone from Dudley participating in this?
Yes.
I believe
So,
it's the same vice chair, vice chair.
Same complement?
The look was possibly the chair and vice chair, although they were not all there, so there was not a commitment. But we have been emailing back and forth with Dudley's town administrator and the superintendent, And yes, he is working with his representatives. So the consensus was to have 2 members of each Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, and
Okay.
they are doing that.
It was also, I
Thank
want to take the time to thank Ms. Craver, everyone on the board who was there, all the finance committee people came, Jessica.
All of our finance team.
Yeah, the whole finance team came. We were very well represented, so thank you for,
Yes.
taking time out of a very busy schedule to attend that very important meeting, so.
It was interesting. It seemed like there might have been a few people there waiting for a bomb to drop, but one didn't drop yet.
I think it was very productive. I think it was a very productive meeting.
I think so, very informative. And it definitely offered, I think, some insight into what we're looking at for the next 1 to 3 years.
Especially seeing peeling back and seeing how the formula, the dreaded formula we've been talking about for years now, kind of works. It still leaves a lot of questions, but at least you kind of see where it's coming from.
It is a dreaded formula, and it was good to get the insight for the next few years. Sadly, though, it still leaves us with a lot of question marks and planning for the 10 and 20 years from now.
So what would be helpful is probably if the board has a discussion on its thoughts, so that your representatives, when they go to this meeting, can not only bring information back to you from that committee meeting, but to also take some of your thoughts and concerns and
Yep.
things you'd like to see, or information that wasn't provided in the first round.
I would welcome that.
I would, I know I mentioned this at that meeting. I'll just reiterate that. Please email me with those ideas, recommendations, questions, so I can bring that up to the committee when we meet.
And as you know, in attending, there was not any discussion about the regionalization.
Correct.
So I will be looking to the board to get further direction on what you would like to do with that study that you asked for. I've not acted on it, and, with good reason to try and give this an opportunity. So.
I would throw out there that I'm still all for it, and I can't.
For the study of the.
Well, I'm all for deregionalization, and if a study would confirm what I think it will confirm, I'd be all for it. I actually walked out of that meeting and felt that a lot of the data he gave and a lot of the information that was provided actually cemented me even more in wanting to pursue deregionalization and whether that is actually an option. As I mentioned, it would be the bomb that people thought was going to drop but didn't there. They did provide great information for the next 1 to 3 years. But the problem is it doesn't solve our problem for the long term. And we need to find out whether Shepherd Hill is our solution for the long term or whether deregionalization is the solution for our long term. And by long term, I mean 10, 20 years down the road from now, because we have to have a better solution than just Prop 2.5 override every 3 years. Prop 2.5, we have to have a solution for the long term, I think, health of our educational system in Charlton and benefit of our children and our taxpayers.
Amazon, why not Charlton?
Yes.
But that is not the official, the board is not taking an official stance on that
That
at
is
all.
the position and opinion of one member of the board, and that member's request that we pursue investigating that, because I still believe from that data that could prove to be the long-term solution for us.
I also believe that the next steps in regard to that, I believe someone mentioned being a part of the original committee who looked at that, about finding that information from the original study of the
Well, not the original study. The original study, I'm told, was 20 to 30 years ago.
It's still a good starting point to take a look at.
Well,
So taking
it's irrelevant. The person had referred to a more recent study that apparently none of us were aware of, and they claimed that there was a more recent study done, correct? It was
Yes,
just-
within the last 5 to 10 years.
Right, much more recent.
Right.
That's what we
So
would
I
like
think the
to
next
get a
step
copy of.
is to find the information that's already out there.
She came and spoke at a meeting.
So
About 2 weeks
we
ago.
have been
Right, we want
working
that.
with the school
Mhm.
Okay.
and trying to find out who has that, and we've contacted her, the people
Right.
that she's recommended.
Very
Okay.
good,
So-
thank you.
We have not found it at this point.
Okay.
One thing I do want to say is, one of the questions that had been brought up was why not do it in-house? My suggestion would be to absolutely have a third party. Spend
Unbiased.
some of the money, unbiased, to take a look at this, so that it's on an even playing field and
Mhm.
everybody, it's believable, because that's one of the things you want is transparency, and you want integrity in
And quite
whatever
frankly,
report
experience
you do.
in doing an evaluation and assessment of that nature and that magnitude, you want someone who really knows
And especially,
And
the
I'm not
questions are
saying
going to
that-
come up, if anything we pursue going forward, that's going to be a question that comes up, and we need to be able to provide answers.
Realistically, are you going to be on the hook 10, 20 years from now for a $50 million rehab? Or 50, 60 million for a new school? Well, okay, I mean, we really.
I mean, that's just one.
Right, so I'm saying there's a
facet of
lot
it.
of information, and the problem is there's a lot of misinformation and misleading, misdirection going on in newspaper posts and everything else, and it's like, people think it's gonna happen tomorrow.
Right,
That's
so
not how it works.
before we go any further, let's wait until we have all the information before we have any additional discussions on it.
Right,
So
we
that we
wanna
have
have
the
our data.
facts. Yeah.
So what I would need is direction from you on, I hear you wanting to get more information. I had talked about maybe using about $3,000 to kind of get a bird's eye view. You got the report for the dentist, one, which was $30,000, which was in-depth and gave you a lot more information. So now is actually a good time to have this conversation between this meeting and next meeting as to how much would you like funded for this, because if you're going over the 3,000, most likely what we need to do is to put something on town meeting to fund that. in the-
So my
in the
question is,
department, out of free cash.
in regards to that 3,000 versus more, bird's eye versus in-depth look, what does that mean? What kind of, what deliverable is different? Like, how are they looking at that? Like, what is the difference? Like, what is, why spend more money? Like, what would be the reason for that?
Well, I think what we sent you was the RFP for Dennis, which would tell you all the components that would go in. A $3,000 one is just gonna say, not much.
Your Cliff Notes version.
Right, but it's still,
But then,
So,
yeah.
go ahead, yeah. It's like the assessment center. There's the light version and there's the in-depth version.
right.
Civil service, we get the light version, 1, 2, and 3. And that's all the information you're provided, and you have to stick to it unless there's some reason to go around. Non-civil service, they could have gave us all that data, all their evaluations, all the pros and cons. And that's what I would liken this to that. If we go the cheap route, we're getting civil service, rank 1, 2, 3, and you gotta kind of pull from it what we can. If we go with the in-depth study, we're gonna get all that data, all the assessments, all the evaluations, all the numbers, and the actual impact. I just think that's the way I would describe the difference between the two. And you're looking at, basically, if you make a mistake, and I'm not talking about that, but if you make a mistake regarding deregionalization, whether to leave the regional school system or even to stay with it, either way, if you make a mistake, that mistake's going to cost this town literally tens of millions of dollars. So you know what? The decision better be right.
I agree, but the 3,000 versus 30,000, I thought it was a very disparate number, and
It is.
it was kind of jarring.
So maybe we could ask to get some, something to allay that, what can we expect? How deep will the research go for the money? What, how much data will we get? How deep will he drill?
Maybe I can get a 3,000, a 10,000, and then 30,000, so you can maybe see the differences.
That would
How's
be fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's important. We don't want to find ourselves 20 years down the road, 20 years behind, and 50 million in the hole.
And of course, obviously, the research that's being done right now is also going to help us decide.
Absolutely.
So for yeah, as a basis. So for our next meeting, we can compare that to what was actually provided. So yeah, I think next
good.
meeting will be, we'll have that on for next meeting.
And is there a record of who that person was that mentioned that other study, the one that?
It's in our
It
minutes.
should be in the minutes.
Yeah, if we can contact her and maybe ask you the copy of that
Mary
research.
has done that, and we're trying to get it. She does not have a copy of it.
It's a good start.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then lastly, the Gurren dog hearing. As you know, we've been waiting to find out the outcome from the court on Mr. Gurren's dangerous dog that the board held a hearing on. Mr. Gurren has provided proof that his dog Gabriel was euthanized at Tufts Emergency Services on September 16th. I'd like to commend the board and Ann Salou, the animal control officer, for your empathy and guidance to Mr. Gurren on this difficult matter.
Yes, I agree. Definitely full kudos to Ms. Salou for, going through that process. It was appealed multiple times. Definitely not an easy decision and not a fun one by any
No.
means. So, big thanks again for Ms. Salou for, doing her duty. Any questions for the town administrator?
No.
Is there any other business unknown at the time of posting? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. One of you need to do it.
Yeah.
We don't need to announce the next meeting announcement or
I usually
anything.
do it, sometimes I do it during the discussion.
I think I have the right one. Mr. Chair?
Mr. Singer?
I would move to go into executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body regarding clerical union, highway union salaries, landfill litigation, IMA, Casella zoning appeal, and Number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, Exxon water line, pump station land purchase, if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second, and the chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. We will also exit executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a roll call vote. Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in executive session at 9:29 PM. Our next regular selectmen's meeting will be October 10th, and the special town meeting will be held on Monday, October 16th. Have a great night.